Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Holy crap, it's so big, so white, so round. Wait, where is this? Are you M? Wait, don't kill me. Asterisk splat asterisk, Ron watched as a black arrow pierced his heart. His consciousness blurring as he thought, holy crap. I just transmigrated and I'm already dead, HMPH. Your eyes should be gouged out. How dare you blaspheme against this god? A pleasant voice drifted into Ron's ears. Ron didn't care, Enamorph was going to die soon anyway. And besides seeing IM's beautiful body. To be honest, it's quite large. Seeing I'm naked before I Dieven as a ghost. I'll be quite dashing, damn it, area, tusk tusk tusk. It must taste delicious. IM's rage completely engulfed the entire bathroom. Countless black arrows pierced Ron's body, 1,000 arrows through his heart. She didn't know how Ron got there. But now she only wanted to kill him. Ron quickly fell silent. Just when IM thought Ron was about to die. A beam of light enveloped Ron's soul and vanished through the wall at lightning speed. She couldn't even catch up. This scene left her frozen in shock. What is that? 1500th year of the Sea Calendar Windmill Village. East Blue Goa Kingdom, while with a loud cry Ron D. Isaac was born in this peaceful coastal village. When he struggled to open his heavy eyelids, the blinding sunlight made him instinctively squint. Through his blurred vision, several swaying figures gradually came into focus. He was being held in the arms of a midwife with a wrinkled face. Congratulations, madam, it's a healthy boy. His birthday is May 22, 1500, the midwife said joyfully. Ron tried to speak, but could only utter ee sounds. He was horrified to realize that he had turned into a baby. What shocked him even more was that when he turned his tender neck to look around, the wooden ceiling and the windmill decorations hanging on the walls felt strangely familiar. Let me see, a gentle female voice came from the side. And when Ron was handed over to the speaker, his pupils suddenly contracted. It was a face he knew all too well. With her long-emerald green hair, gentle watery eyes, and signature headscarf Makino, the proprietress of the Windmill Village Tavern. What an adorable little guy, Makino chuckled, gently stroking Ron's cheek with her finger before taking out a hand-knitted baby sock from the basket. It's a little something from me. While Ron was still reeling from the shock, something even more devastating happened. Makino actually tapped him lightly with her index finger. Hey, you're quite energetic, Makino said with a mischievous smile. Ron was filled with shame and indignation, roaring inwardly. Damn it, I'll remember this. When I grow up, I'll make sure his brother gets justice. After everyone had left, Ron was placed in the cradle. Through the window, he could see fishing boats moored in the distant harbor. And further still, the boundless blue sea, the sea breeze, carrying a salted damp scent brushed against his face. All of this reminded him that this was indeed the world of pirates. What on earth is going on? Ron tried to sort through the jumbled memories in his mind. He clearly remembered that in his previous life, he was an ordinary office worker on Earth who was hit and killed by a dump truck while helping an old lady cross the street. In his previous life, he had just transmigrated to the world of One Piece. Somehow ended up in IM's bathroom. And after seeing all of him, he was killed by 1,000 arrows. And now I've been reborn. Ron looked at his chubby little hands. And the midwife just said it's the year 1500. So there are still 3 years until Luffy is born. Just then the door was gently pushed open. A burly man with red hair and a gruesome scar over his left eye peeked in and asked in a low voice, "Is the little guy asleep?" Ron's pupils dilated again. Shanks, one of the future 4 emperors, was now crept stealthily toward his cradle. I heard there was a new life born in the village today. So I came to see, Shanks grinned broadly. But he paused noticeably when he saw Ron's wide, staring eyes. This kid's eyes. It's like he's seen it all before. Ron quickly pretended to be an ordinary baby, waving his arms and babbling. But his heart was already pounding. Windmill Village was far more lively than he had imagined. Suddenly Shank's left arm became burning hot, and he felt like he was about to lose control. Shanks quickly left the house. Ron quickly made himself look like a fool. If he wasn't mistaken, Shank's left arm should have IM's demonic contract, perhaps allowing him to sense Shank's presence. Ron could only pretend to be asleep. After Shanks and the others left, he was really about to fall asleep when, just as he closed his eyes, a beautiful electronic voice sounded in his mind, ding. The multiverse main system is activated and bound. As long as the target matches the subsystem's binding, the host can distribute the subsystem to the target, and the host can choose the subsystem at will. Rewards earned by the subsystem will be returned to the main system tenfold. Oh, the long-awaited cheat code has finally arrived. Ron looked at the system's feature description and clicked his tongue in amazement. Is it really that amazing? Genuine product guaranteed. What are the conditions for the system to be bound? A figure whose strength is similar to or weaker than the host's, and who has influence in the One Piece world. How about Shanks? Ron thought, why not just give Shanks a system? If Shanks gains anything, I'll get 10 times the reward. Wouldn't that make him invincible? The host is far inferior to Shanks and does not meet the requirements. There are too many influential figures in the world of One Piece, but those whose strength isn't far behind mine. I'm just a baby, what strength do I have? Ron was completely numbed. You should just stick to breastfeeding for 2.5 years. To become stronger and defeat IM, you need to wait for the main characters or influential figures like Ace and Sabo to appear. Then bind the subsystem to them and make them work for you. In 1501, Ron learned that Ace had also been born the previous year, but naturally became the older brother. In 1502, 2-year-old Esbaron became the eldest brother. In 1503, Luffy was born Rona's the older brother. Teased his younger brother along with Ace. In 1507, Ron Ace met Saboho had run away from home, and together they saved money to go to sea and become pirates. In 1510, Ron Ace Sabo and Luffy became sworn brothers, with Ron as the eldest. On a sunny afternoon at the uncertain final destination, Ron Ace and Sabo looked at the stolen money with excitement in their eyes. Ron in particular felt the time had come. Ace and Sabo, after 2.5 years of training, had finally caught up in strength. The setting sun painted the outline of the garbage mountain red. 3 teenagers sat around a campfire, roasting wild boar meat they had just hunted. The grease dripped into the fire, making a sizzling sound. Sabo was devouring a leg of meat. Ace was skillfully flipping the roasted meat while Ron, the eldest of the 3, was unusually silent, his gaze thoughtfully fixed on the flickering flames. Hey Ron, you're acting weird today. Sabo tilted his head, grease still on his lips. Are you thinking of something naughty? Ace looked up and glanced at Ron suspiciously. Have you been secretly hiding money? Upon hearing this, Ron's lips curled into a mysterious smile. He slowly put down the meat in his hand, patted the grease off his hands and sighed deeply. Feigning seriousness, actually, I have a secret I've never told you, a secret. Sabo's eyes lit up and he immediately leaned closer. Could it be that you've really hidden money? Ace scoffed. Impossible. I manage all of Brother Luo's money. Ron shook his head, his gaze sweeping between the two of them, and lowered his voice, saying, I'm coming clean. No more pretending, actually. I'm a system user who ate a system fruit, a system fruit. Ace and Sabo exclaimed in unison. Their eyes wide with surprise, Sabo jumped to his feet, dropping the meat he was holding. A devil fruit user. Brother Ron, you're a devil fruit user. Ace was speechless with shock, but soon his eyes burned with fervor. No wonder. No wonder you can always anticipate the enemy's movements and always find the most effective ways to get stronger during training. It's all because of the devil fruit. Ron watched their reactions with satisfaction, secretly chuckling to himself. Sure enough, These two brats were completely absorbed by the devil fruit, automatically ignoring the strange title of system person. That's right, Ron nodded knowingly. And the most unique thing about my ability is that I can share it with you. Share, Sabo and Ace were shocked again, so we can have some kind of system too. Ace's voice was filled with barely concealed excitement. That's right. Ron grinned, but you have to promise me one thing first. What is it? Sabo asked impatiently. From now on, you must strive to become stronger and never act impulsively, because your deaths would greatly harm me. Ron narrowed his eyes, smiling like a fox. Ace and Sabo exchanged a glance and nodded without hesitation. Once a brother, always a brother, however. Sabo suddenly seemed to realize something, his brow furrowing slightly. Wait, brother. If we accept your power, does that mean we can't eat other devil fruits anymore? Ace realized what he meant, and his expression turned serious. Right. Isn't it true that a person can only eat one devil fruit? Ron waved his hand and laughed. Don't worry. My abilities are different, I'm just lending them to you. It won't affect your ability to eat other devil fruits in the future. Really? Sabo's eyes lit up. Of course, Ron nodded. And once you find the devil fruit you want, you can eat it without any problems. Ace and Sabo exchanged a glance, so excited they almost jumped for joy. Fantastic. Now we're considered system users too, Sabo cheered. System, Ace repeated softly. Although he found the title a bit strange, the thought of becoming stronger immediately made him grin. All right. From today onwards, the three of us are system brothers. Ron watched the two boys' excited expressions and chuckled to himself. These two silly boys will have plenty of surprises in store for them in the future. The campfire crackled, illuminating three young faces. Ace and Sabo held their breath, their eyes fixed on Ron, as if awaiting some sacred ritual. Ready. Ron's lips curled into a slight smile, and he lightly tapped his finger in the air, as if he were plucking some invisible thread. In an instant, a semi-transparent light screen appeared before Sabo's eyes, and a pale blue stream of data cascaded down like a waterfall, eventually condensing into several characters shimmering with golden light. The ultimate pay-to-win system is now bound. Host, Sabo. Current balance 0 Baileys. Rules for getting stronger. Spending money is fun for a while, and spending money all the time is even more fun. Sabo's eyes widened, his mouth slightly agape, and he froze on the spot. Sabo, hey, what's wrong with you? Ace waved his hand in front of Ron's eyes, but couldn't see anything. He could only look at Ron in confusion. What did he see? Ron smiled without saying a word, his gaze falling on Sabo's system interface, where it clearly displayed Basic Physical Mastery price, 10 million berries. Intermediate Armament Hacky price, 1 billion berries. Advanced Observation Hacky price, 10 billion berries. Sabo's breathing quickened, and his fingers trembled slightly. This is outrageous, he finally exclaimed. All these years of hard training in physical skills, and I can get them for just 10 million berries. Ace was completely confused and couldn't help but grab Sabo's shoulders and shake him. Hey, what are you talking about? Sabo snapped out of his daze and excitedly grabbed Ace's arm. Ace. Brother, Ron gave me a pay-to-win system. I can get stronger just by spending money. Get stronger by spending money? Ace asked skeptically. You haven't been tricked by Brother Luo, have you? Sabo shook his head vigorously, his eyes gleaming with excitement. No, it's true. The system clearly states that 10 million berries can be exchanged for basic physical combat mastery, and 1 billion berries can be used to learn armament hacky. Ace was a little confused because he had never heard of armament hacky, so he didn't understand it at all. But then Sabo explained to him what armament hacky was. After understanding, Ace realized how difficult it was to acquire armament hacky, and he gasped, turning to Ron. Ron thighs. This is too exaggerated. Ron shrugged, looking nonchalant. Exaggerated? This is nothing. The Sabo family has more money than they can spend. They can use it all for microtransactions. Upon hearing this, Sabo's eyes suddenly sharpened. That's right. He muttered to himself, a cold smile playing on his lips. Those disgusting family members. Didn't they always think money was more important than family? Fine, then I'll squander every last penny they have, leaving them nothing. Ron nodded in satisfaction and patted Sabo on the shoulder. That's more like it. Remember, the essence of the pay-to-win system is your money is my money. And my strength is still my strength. Sabo took a deep breath and suddenly bowed deeply to Ron. Brother Ron. From this day forward, you are my brother. I, Sabo, will follow you for life. Seeing Sabo's expression, Ace couldn't help but laugh and scold, hey. You're too materialistic, aren't you? You were bought off by a system. Sabo straightened up. Grinning, Ace. You'll understand once you get your own system. Ron chuckled, turning his gaze to Ace. Don't rush, Ace. Your system, I've already thought it through. Ace's eyes lit up, and he eagerly leaned forward. What is my system? Seeing the expectant glint in Ace's eyes, Ron's lips curled into a mysterious smile. He deliberately drawled, Ace. Your system is a sign-in system. With a light tap of Ron's fingertip, a pale golden light screen unfolded before Ace, displaying several lines of shimmering text. The ultimate daily check-in system is now linked. Host Portgas D. Ace. Today's check-in location, unknown destination terminal. Check-in reward, randoms. Ace stared wide-eyed at the light screen before him in disbelief. He tentatively asked, system sign-in now, ding. Check-in successful. Reward, golden crown worth approximately 8 million berries. A gleaming golden crown appeared out of thin air in Ace's hand, its light shining brightly in the campfire. Sabo's jaw nearly dropped in astonishment. This is too convenient. No need to spend money, just sign in to get a reward. Ace waved the crown excitedly. Look. This is so much more convenient than Sabo's pay-to-win system. He stroked the crown's intricate patterns with obvious delight. And if we sell this, we'll have the funds for our voyage. Ron nodded in satisfaction. That's right. That's the advantage of the sign-in system. It requires no cost. As long as you sign in at different locations, you'll receive corresponding rewards. He paused, a sly glint in his eyes, and the more special the location, the richer the reward. Sabo looked enviously at the crown in Ace's hand. Then suddenly a brilliant idea struck him. Wait, Ace. If you become a pirate, wouldn't you be able to take advantage of your voyages to visit and check off various islands? Upon hearing this, Ace's eyes blazed with fighting spirit. Awesome. This way I can both fulfill my dream of becoming a pirate and continuously grow stronger through daily check-ins. He excitedly turned to Ron. Brother Ron. This system is practically tailor-made for me. Ron chuckled and patted Ace on the shoulder. Remember, the essence of the sign-in system is travel the world and grow stronger without worry. However, he lowered his voice mysteriously. The sign-in rewards at some special locations might exceed your expectations. Ace eagerly pressed, like what, for example? Ron deliberately kept everyone in suspense. Signing in at Fleet Admiral Sengoku's office at Marine Headquarters might grant you top-tier observation haki. Signing in at other important locations might yield different abilities. Maybe even a devil fruit. Sabo and Ace both gasped in astonishment. Sabo couldn't help but exclaim, "This is just too incredible." Ace clenched his fist, his eyes gleaming with determination. It's decided. Once we've saved enough money to set sail, I'm going to check out the most dangerous place in the world. Looking at his two excited brothers, Ron felt secretly pleased. He knew that with the support of these two systems, the future pirate world would be turned upside down because of these two brothers. The campfire gradually died down, but the flames of the three boys' dreams burned ever brighter. The next day, a gentle sea breeze caressed Ace's small boat, which was ready to set sail. Golden sunlight streamed onto the deck, illuminating the excited faces of the three boys, just as they were preparing to head to a more distant island to check in and make some money. A luxurious ship inlaid with gold and jade suddenly appeared on the distant horizon. Its prow was engraved with an intricate family crest. Glittering in the sunlight, that is. Sabo narrowed his eyes, his expression suddenly turning serious. As the large ship drew closer, several familiar figures appeared on the deck, a middle-aged man in an elegant suit with a dignified face, a noblewoman wearing a pearl necklace standing beside him, and in front of them a short boy with a fawning expression. Father's mother. Sabo's fists clenched involuntarily, his nails digging deep into his palms. The short figure was none other than his adopted brother Steri, who had taken everything from him and was now looking at their simple boat with a smug gaze. The luxury yacht slowly approached the shore, and the gangway was lowered. Steri was the first to rush down, shouting in an exaggerated tone, "Brother, we've finally found you." Father sent over a dozen ships to search the East Daxia Sea. His eyes gleamed with feigned tears, but his lips curled into an undisguised sneer. Sabo's father, King Atruk II, slowly descended the gang, his sharp gaze sweeping over the three boys. "Sabo, have you had enough fun? It's time to go home." His tone carried an unquestionable command. Ace immediately stepped in front of Sabo. Watching the newcomers warily, "Sabo won't go back with you." Surprisingly, Sabo gently placed a hand on Ace's shoulder. A meaningful smile played on his lips. "No, Ace. I've decided to go back." "What?" Sabo lowered his voice, a sly glint in his eyes. "Don't forget, I have a pay-to-win system now." He patted the money pouch at his waist. "My family's vault is far more tempting than these 8 million berries." Ace immediately understood, a slight smile playing on his lips. "I see, you want to." "That's right." Sabo's eyes flashed with a ruthless glint as he whispered, "I'm going to drain the Atrolk family's wealth, leaving not a single copper coin." It was unclear what the three were whispering about, but Steli had clearly heard Sabo say he wanted to go home. Upon seeing this, S's fake smile froze. He had expected Sabo to put up a fierce resistance, but to his surprise, the other party agreed to go home so readily. This unusual behavior set off alarm bells in his mind. But then he thought that as long as Sabo returned to that house, he had plenty of ways to make his brother voluntarily leave again. Brother has finally come to his senses. Steri forced a smile and tried to affectionately take Sabo's arm, but Sabo subtly avoided her. Sabo turned to face his two brothers and solemnly gave them a pirate salute. "Once I've used up all my wealth, I'll come find you and join you," although reluctant. Ace understood Sabo's plan and patted him hard on the shoulder. "Remember to spend more money. We'll be waiting for you on the Grand Lines." Under the incredulous gazes of the Otruks, Sabo strode confidently onto the luxury yacht. Steri followed behind, his smile growing increasingly strained. He had a vague feeling that the Sabo who had returned this time was completely different from the brother who had been so easily manipulated before. The yacht slowly pulled away from the shore. Sabo stood at the stern, watching the two figures grow smaller and smaller, and silently vowed in his heart, "Just you wait, Steri. When we get back, I'll make you watch as the Atrolk family's wealth vanishes bit by bit." The sea breeze ruffled his golden curls, and Sabo's eyes burned with the fire of revenge. This time, he was no longer a noble young master to be slaughtered, but a whale who spends all his money. In 1517, Ace was 17 years old and ready to set sail. Just as Ace's small boat was about to leave the shore, a series of hurried footsteps and familiar shouts suddenly came from the woods along the coast. "Ace, wait for me." A small figure wearing a straw hat stumbled out of the woods, its rubber arms stretching out to grab the tree trunks along the way, using the elasticity to propel it swiftly to the dock. Luffy stood panting on the shore, his straw hat askew, his big eyes brimming with tears. "Damn it, Ace. How could you not wait for me?" Luffy stomped his foot, his rubber leg bouncing up and down on the ground. "We promised to set sail together." Ace stood at the stern, the sea breeze ruffling his black hair. He gave Luffy a warm smile and waved vigorously. "Luffy, you're still too young. I can't wait to see the vast ocean." "I'm not a child anymore," Luffy shouted defiantly, his rubber arm suddenly extending as he tried to grab Ace's ship. "Take me with you." Ron, quick as a flash, grabbed Luffy by the back of his collar and pulled him back like a kitten. Stop fooling around. Luffy Ace has his own adventures. Luffy struggled in Ron's grasp, tears streaming down his face like broken pearls, but Ace watched this scene, a hint of reluctance flashing in his eyes. He turned to Ron and said solemnly, "Brother Ron, I'm entrusting Luffy to you." He knew this older brother who had always taken care of them all too well. The reason Ron hadn't set sail yet was because he was worried about Luffy. The youngest of them all, Ron, holding down the still throwing Luffy with one hand, gave Ace a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about him. I'll take care of him." He ruffled Luffy's messy black hair. "When he's a little older, I'll personally send him out to sea." Upon hearing this, Luffy suddenly stopped struggling. He looked up at Ron with disbelief, his eyes still blurry with tears. "Really, big brother Ron?" Of course. Ron crouched down, looking Luffy straight in the eye. "I promise you. Once you're ready, I'll personally take you out to sea. But before that," he deliberately put on a stern face, "you'll need to learn how to survive at sea first." Ace's small boat had gradually sailed away, becoming a silhouette in the morning sun. Luffy suddenly broke free from Rune's grasp, rushed to the very edge of the dock, and shouted with all his might, "Ace, I'll catch up with you. I'll set sail next year. You'll have to wait for me." The sea breeze carried his shouts far, far away, and one could vaguely see Ace on the ship raising his arm and giving a thumbs up. Luffy stood there, tears and snot streaming down his face, but stubbornly refused to wipe them away. Ron walked over to him and gently patted his head. "Let's go. It's time to go back to training. If you want to set sail next year, you need to start preparing now." Luffy sniffed hard, then suddenly turned and hugged Ron's leg tightly. "Brother Ron, thank you." His voice was muffled. "If you hadn't stayed, I definitely would have secretly run away with Ace." Ron felt the dampness on his trouser leg and smiled helplessly. "All right, a man shouldn't cry like that. From today onwards, I'll train you in the strictest way possible," he said deliberately in a serious tone. "Don't complain when it's tough." Sitting on Rune's shoulder, Luffy watched the horizon where Ace had disappeared, then suddenly clenched his little fist. "I will become stronger. Stronger than Ace." Ron watched the ship's silhouette gradually disappear into the distance, a smile unconsciously creeping onto his lips. The two people with the greatest influence on the world are now bound to his subsystem. To kill Emon must possess sufficient strength, otherwise they won't even know how they died. Binding himself to the protagonist is his way to quickly become stronger. As the sun rose full, casting long shadows of the two, Luffy excitedly began planning his future adventures. In 1520, Luffy set sail. The morning in Windmill Village is bathed in gold by the rising sun. On the dock, a meticulously crafted canoe rests quietly, its bow carved with Luffy's iconic straw hat, and its sides painted with exaggerated smiley faces. "Brother Rune, this is awesome." Luffy jumped around excitedly on the dock, his rubber body bouncing up and down like a spring. "This ship is even cooler than Ace's back then." His straw hat fluttered up and down with each jump, his face beaming with undisguised joy. Ron leaned against a large tree on the shore, dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves and casting shadows on his face. Looking at the energetic Luffy, a smile unconsciously crept onto his lips. "Finally. This day has come." "Huh, what did you say, Brother Ron?" Luffy suddenly slammed on the brakes, his rubber face almost touching Ron's. "What do you mean by this day?" Ron chuckled and pushed Luffy's face away from his face, which was inches away from his own. "Remember the devil fruit I told you about?" "Of course I remember." Luffy immediately stood up straight. "I ate the gum fruits." He suddenly widened his eyes. "Wait. Brother Ron, you wouldn't have too." "That's right." Ron snapped his fingers, and a semi-transparent system interface unfolded between the two of them. It was the system Ron had prepared for Luffy, and he explained, "I am a user of the system fruit. From now on, you will also have your own system." Luffy's jaw nearly dropped to the ground, his rubber eyes bulging exaggeratedly. "Wow. That's amazing. What kind of ability is that?" Can one person possess two devil fruit abilities? Sabo said that if someone eats two devil fruits, they'll explode, don't worry. Ron reached out and pushed Luffy's chin back down. This is my ability, it's just temporarily lent to you. He pulled up the system records. Look. Sabo's is a pay-to-win system, Ace's is a daily login system. Luffy's eyes suddenly lit up like stars, and his rubber arm instantly stretched out to wrap around Ron. What about mine? What about mine? I want a system too. Don't rush, Ron said, struggling to breathe. I've already prepared something for you, the God-level selection system. As he finished speaking, a golden light entered Luffy's brow. Luffy abruptly released Ron, touching his forehead. Huh. It feels warm, ding. God-level choice system successfully bound. Host Monkey D. Luffy. System feature, rewards are given for every important choice made. Currently available mission, set sail immediately 1. Set sail immediately reward, 100 kg of Sea King barbecue. 2.5 more years of training. Reward, initial awakening of observation Haki 3. Go to the tavern to say goodbye first. Reward, a specially made rubber boat. Several semi-transparent option boxes suddenly popped up in front of Luffy, startling him. Wow, what are these? How amazing. Ron patiently explained, look. If you choose set sail immediately, you'll get a reward. And he winked mysteriously. The reward will include all sorts of delicious food and meat. Meat. Luffy's saliva instantly dripped to the ground, his rubber tongue trembling like waves. I want to set sail immediately. Those little chicks need 2.5 years of training. He eagerly reached out and tapped the set sail immediately option. Selection successful. Reward, 100 kg of Sea King roasted meat. As the system notification sounded, 10 enormous barbecue grills appeared out of thin air on the canoe, instantly filling the entire dock with their aroma. Luffy's eyes transformed into the shape of meat, and his rubber arms whirled towards the grilled meat like a whirlwind. Meat. It's meat, this is amazing. Watching Luffy wolf down his food, Ron walked to the canoe and gently patted the hull. Luffy. It's time to set off, the azure sea shimmered. Ron stood at the stern, watching the silhouette of Windmill Village gradually disappear, a meaningful smile appearing on his lips. He turned to look at Luffy, who was excitedly looking around on the deck. The rubber boy was stretching out his arm to reach for a seagull flying by. Brother Ron, look, I can catch it. Luffy's arm stretched longer and longer like a rubber band. Stop fooling around, sit up straight. Ron gently patted Luffy's straw hat. We'll reach Shell's town in a few days. You'd better conserve your energy. 3 days after they set sail, a dog-headed warship stormed into the harbor of Windmill Village. On the deck, Vice Admiral Garp's face was ashen, and his fists were clenched so tightly they cracked. That Luffy brat actually dared to run away and become a pirate. His roar shook the wooden barrels on the dock. And that brat Ron, he actually joined in the chaos too. Makino hurriedly stepped forward to explain, Mr. Garp, Ron specifically went to sea with Luffy, he said. What did you say? Garp's eyes widened. They said they'd keep an eye on Luffy and wouldn't let him cause any big trouble. Makino added softly, and Ron even left the flight path map, saying you can go to them anytime if you're worried. Upon hearing this, Garp's furious expression suddenly froze. He stroked the prickly stubble on his chin, lost in thought. That Ron kid. He's certainly thought things through. Images of Ron from childhood to adulthood flashed through my mind, the boy who always stood quietly behind Ace and Luffy, yet always managed to come up with the perfect solution at crucial moments. I remember once Luffy almost fell off a cliff, and it was Rune who had tied a rope beforehand. And when Ace was injured in a fight, it was Rune who prepared an emergency medical kit, HMPH. Garp suddenly burst into laughter, slamming his fist into his palm. With Ron with me, this old man is much less worried. He turned to his adjutant and shouted, Return. No need to chase. The adjutant gaped in surprise, but a Vice Admiral Luffy. He's with Ron around, that kid can't cause any trouble. Garp waved his hand, a sly glint in his eyes. Besides, He lowered his voice. It'll be a good opportunity for Ron to teach that disobedient grandson a lesson. On the sea, Ron seemed to sense something and looked towards the direction of Windmill Village. He knew Garp's temperament too well, judging by the time. The old man should have already discovered that they had gone out to sea. "Brother Ron, look, there are dolphins," Luffy shouted from the ship's side. Ron snapped out of his thoughts, walked over to Luffy's side. And looking at Luffy's smiling face, he secretly planned his next move first. To go to Shell's town to recruit Zoro. And then to gradually build the Straw Hat crew. With the system in place, traversing the Grand Line at top speed is no problem, Luffy. Ron suddenly spoke, remember. After you meet your first crewmate, follow my instructions. Got it, Luffy replied without turning his head. Almost leaning out of the ship's railing, wow. The dolphins are jumping so high, Ron shook his head. He took out the nautical logbook from his pocket and carefully marked the route on it. He had deliberately kept a copy of this logbook in Windmill Village, in case Garp came to investigate. Well, after 2 days of sailing, the outline of the town of Shells finally appeared on the horizon. Ron stood at the bow, the sea breeze ruffling his bangs. A glint of shrewdness in his eyes, he turned to Luffy, who was playing with a passing Seaberdan, called out, Luffy. We're getting ready to dock. Remember what I told you, whatever you see later. Wait for my signal before you act, got it? Luffy replied in a drawn-out tone, his rubber arm already reaching impatiently towards the wooden stakes on the dock. I want to be the first one ashore. Ron shook his head helplessly and skillfully maneuvered the small boat to shore. As soon as they set foot on solid ground, he led Luffy straight to the tavern from his memory. Pushing open the creaking wooden door, they were greeted by a rich aroma of alcohol and a tense atmosphere. Inside the tavern, the green-haired swordsman was surrounded by a group of marines. Zoro's 3 swords were already drawn, his eyes sharp as blades at his feet. Helmeppo's wolfhound lay in a pool of blood, and the blonde young master was screaming hysterically, "Kill him. I want this pirate hunter torn to pieces." Just then, a familiar blue light screen suddenly appeared before Luffy's eyes. God-level choice system triggered. Option 1, observe and wait. Reward basic armament Haki experience pack. Option 2, help Zoro out of trouble without harming him. Reward mastery of navigation. Option 3, instantly defeat Helmeppo. Reward the legendary sword White Moon. Luffy's eyes lit up instantly, Brother Rune. The system has reappeared. Ron leaned closer to look at the options. A slight smile playing on his lips, just choose what you want. Of course, Luffy grinned, choosing the third option without hesitation. He couldn't stand this kind of thing then. His rubbery legs compressed sharply, propelling him forward like a spring, gum-gum rocket launcher. Before Helmeppo could react, he was sent flying backward by a powerful punch, crashing through the tavern's wooden wall and landing awkwardly on the muddy ground outside. The entire tavern fell silent instantly, everyone staring in disbelief at the straw-hatted boy who had suddenly appeared. You know who I am," Bellamere shouted incoherently. Clutching his swollen cheek, "My father is Colonel Morgan." "You're all dead." Ron walked slowly to the door, looking down at the spoiled brat. "Oh, so what do you want?" Helmeppo struggled to his feet, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You can't stay here forever. Once you're gone, I'll blow this tavern to smithereens. I'll send those wretched mother and daughter and that brat to feed the fish." Upon hearing this, the tavern owner and her daughter turned deathly pale, and the little girl hid in her mother's arms in fright. Luffy's smile vanished, and his eyes beneath the straw hat turned dangerous. Ron, however, suddenly chuckled and pulled a video den mushy from his pocket. "Should I play what you just said to Marine headquarters? Threatening civilians is a serious crime, Helmeppo." Young Master Helmeppo's face turned ashen. Just as he was caught in a dilemma, a system notification sounded in Luffy's mind. Selection complete. Reward, the legendary sword White Moon has been awarded. A flash of white light appeared, and a snow-white longsword materialized in Luffy's hand. The blade shimmered with a moonlit glow, and the guard was engraved with delicate cloud patterns. Zoro's gaze was immediately drawn to the sword, and all three of his swords involuntarily lowered. This is a great grade sword, one of the 21 great grade swords. Ron watched this scene with satisfaction, then turned to Helmeppo and said coldly, "Aren't you going to get lost? Should I contact Marine headquarters right now?" Bellumeber gritted his teeth, took a few steps back, and finally threw down a vicious, "You just wait," before slinking away inside the tavern. The proprietress said in a trembling voice, Thank you." Ron smiled gently, no need to be so polite. He glanced at Luffy, who was still admiring the white moon, and Zoroho was staring intently at the sword, knowing that things were going according to plan. On the other side, Zoro's brow furrowed deeply at Helmeppo's vicious threat, the veins on the back of his hand gripping the hilt of his sword bulging. His eyes burned with fury, but even more so with concern for the innocent victims. Ron stepped forward calmly, his navy blue cloak fluttering slightly in the tavern's dim light. "Don't worry," his voice was steady and firm. "The problem of spoiled brats can be solved by addressing the root cause." Zoro's sharp gaze shifted to Ron, the three swords at his waist trembling slightly. "You mean take care of Colonel Monka directly?" Ron's lips curled into a meaningful smile. "To catch the thief, catch the king first." Upon hearing this, Zoro's tense shoulders relaxed slightly, and he nodded approvingly, saying, "That's definitely the safest method." Just then, Luffy bounced up to him, his eyes gleaming beneath his straw hat. "Hey, Moss Head, come be my crewmate." As he spoke, he magically produced a snow-white sword from behind his back. "This is for you. It's such a waste for me to have such a fine sword." Zoro's pupils contracted sharply, and the three swords nearly fell from his waist. "This is one of the 50 great swords, Hakugetsu." His voice trembled slightly with excitement. "A legendary sword that can cut through moonlight." Ron stood to the side, when suddenly a system notification sounded in his mind. "Ding, subsystem host has completed selected task. Triggering a 10x reward obtained, great grade sword. 21 heavenly demons." His robes fluttered without wind and a long, jet-black sword appeared out of thin air in his hand. The blade gleamed with a ghostly blue light, and the patterns on it resembled the roar of a fierce ghost. Radiating a chilling pressure, "Zoro," Ron said gracefully, flicking his wrist, the tenki tracing an eerie arc in the air. "If you're willing to join us, this grade 21 tenki sword will also be yours." Zoro's eyes widened instantly, and the three swords clattered to the ground. His Adam's apple bobbed, and his voice was hoarse. 21 swords. The tavern was completely silent. Everyone was stunned by the legendary demon sword. Zoro's breathing became rapid, and fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. "I join," he roared suddenly, bowing deeply in loyalty. "Captain Ron, from this day forward my sword is yours." Luffy pouted, clearly annoyed. Hey, I'm the captain. Brother Rune is the big captain." Zoro's expression froze instantly. He scratched his head awkwardly. I see." He stiffly turned to Luffy. "Greetings." "Greetings, Captain." Then he turned to Rune. "Greetings, great captain." Ron couldn't help but chuckle, and solemnly handed the tenki to Zoro. "Welcome to the team. The future world's greatest swordsman." Zoro received the tenki with trembling hands. The moment his fingers touched the hilt, a sharp sword aura shot into the sky, and the tavern's chandelier swayed violently. The proprietress and her daughter had already hidden behind the counter, only their two pairs of frightened yet curious eyes showing. "This sword," Zoro's voice was deep and reverent. "It's as if it were made for me." Ron nodded in satisfaction and turned to Luffy. "So, Captain, what's the next step?" Luffy adjusted his straw hat, flashing his signature bright smile. "No doubt about it. Let's go to the Marine base and beat that Captain Morgan to a pulp." Zoro carefully tucked the tenki and Hakugetsu swords into his waistband, leaving only Wado Ikemanji among his original three swords. He stretched his shoulders, A triumphant smile playing on his lips, just what I wanted. As the sun set, Zoro confidently patted his chest. Follow me. I know the way around the naval base like the back of my hand. He strode confidently at the front, the three famous swords at his waist gleaming brightly in the afterglow. However, after turning just 2 street corners, Ron sensed something was wrong. They were passing the same fish stall for the third time, and the old man who owned it had been giving them strange looks several times already. Zoro, Luffy rubbed his rumbling stomach. Are we? Don't rush, I remember this place, Zoro. Beads of sweat on his forehead. Pointed ahead with feigned composure. Turn right at that intersection just then. The sound of orderly footsteps suddenly came from the end of the street. Bellemere walked arrogantly at the front, followed by fully armed naval soldiers. And leading the way was none other than the ruler of Shell's town, Captain Axeman Morgan, whose axe-shaped chin looked particularly ferocious in the setting sun. It's them, father. Helmeppo shrieked, pointing to the sword at Zoro's waist. That green-haired guy is holding a top-tier sword. Definitely a great-grade sword. A glint of greed flashed in Colonel Monka's one eye. He raised his hand to signal the troops to halt and said gruffly, "Hand over your swords and I might let bygones be bygones." He deliberately brandished the massive axe in his right hand. Otherwise, you know the consequences. Just as Luffy was about to step forward, Ron gently pressed his shoulder. The captain calmly stepped forward, his sea blue cloak fluttering even without wind. Captain Morgan. As a Marine, isn't it inappropriate to extort money in the street? Monka's face darkened, and he slammed his axe heavily on the ground, causing the stone slab to crack in a spiderweb pattern. Boy. In Shell's town I am the rule, remember. Hiding behind his father ratted smugly. Those who know what's good for them will hand over their knives. Especially that black one, it looks valuable. Zoro's hand was already on the hilt of the demon's sword Tenki. The cursed blade seemed to sense its master's fighting spirit. Emitting a faint hum, he lowered his voice and said to Ron, "Captain, shall we make our move?" Just then, a familiar system interface suddenly popped up in front of Luffy's eyes. God-level choice system triggered. Option 1, let Morgan go. Reward, Armament Haki Advancement Experience Pack. Option 2, covertly investigate and track. Reward, Enhanced Observation Haki Perception. Option 3, kill Colonel Morgan directly. Reward, a pirate ship fully loaded with food. Luffy's eyes instantly transformed into the shape of flesh, and drool gushed onto the ground. Meat. It's a ship full of food. He slapped Zoro on the shoulder. Moss head. Leave this to the captain. Luffy's movements were incredibly fast. His rubber arm left a trail of afterimages in the air. Before Colonel Morgan could even react, he felt a tremendous force grab his collar, and he was lifted into the air. What? Monka stared in astonishment, his one eye widening. The axe slipping from his hand, his vision spun, and all he could see was the boy in the straw hat grinning. His right arm stretched back like a fully drawn bowstring. Rubber Luffy's arm was compressed to its limit, and the muscle fibers made a teeth-grinding, crunching sound. Zoro instinctively took a half-step back. He could feel the terrifying power that was about to be unleashed. Rocket launchers boomed. The compressed rubber arm shot out at an astonishing speed. Colonel Monka's nearly 300-pound muscular body was blasted away like a rag doll, his naval cloak fluttering in the air as he traced a perfect parabola. Bang crack with a loud crash as bricks shattered. Monka smashed through the 3-meter-high granite wall surrounding the naval base. Amidst the flying debris, his body bounced more than 10 meters across the base's training ground before coming to a stop, carving a deep furrow in the mud. The entire street was completely silent. Bellemere slumped to the ground, his legs trembling uncontrollably. A dark stain gradually seeped into the crotch of his expensive silk trousers, and a foul-smelling liquid flowed through the cracks in the stone slabs. Father, his lips trembled, unable to believe that his father, who was invincible in his heart, had been defeated in one move. Zoro's 3 swords clattered to the ground. His mouth gaped open, and he mechanically turned to look at Luffy. Hey. You be ****D, Luffy, however, had already withdrawn his arm and was intently picking his nose. Huh. It flew farther than I thought, Ron clapped lightly. A look of approval flashing in his eyes, not bad control of power. Killed him outright, he was lucky to have a whole corpse. Then looking at Zoro said, that spoiled brat over there was killed too. Zoro scoffed, cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots. Hums, I love that. Zoro then walked step by step toward Helmeppo, as the latter repeatedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. A flash of cold light appeared from his sword, and he closed his eyes forever. From the distant naval base came the sound of sirens. Colonel Monka was carried onto a stretcher by soldiers like a rag doll. His jaw twisted to one side and blood constantly spilling from the corner of his mouth. Selection complete, rewards issued. Obtained, improved going merry with a permanent food storage compartment. A sudden exclamation came from the direction of the harbor. A three-masted sailing ship with a cute sheep's head carved on its prow was slowly approaching the shore. The deck was piled high with all kinds of roasted meat, fruit and desserts, and the aroma wafted throughout the town. Ron watched this scene, 3 black lines appearing on his forehead. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. Did I choose the wrong system for Luffy? Well, there are top-tier rewards like armament haki and observation haki. But this idiot always chooses the food option. Zoro stared dumbfounded at the luxurious ship in the harbor, then at Luffy, who was drooling as he ran towards the port. Finally turning to Rune, Captains, has your pirate crew always been like this? Ron waved his hand dismissively. You'll get used to it. He watched Luffy's bouncy figure, then suddenly added as if remembering something, oh, and remember to keep an eye on your sword. That kid'll even gnaw on a famous sword when he's starving. Zoro in. As the going merry's whistle echoed throughout Shell's harbor, Luffy excitedly ran around on the deck, his rubber arms constantly touching and groping everything. Fantastic, this ship is bigger than I imagined. He dashed into the kitchen, followed by a joyful shout, Brother Ron, Zoro, come quick. The refrigerator here automatically replenishes its food. At the same time, a system notification sounded in Ron's mind, ding. Detected that the host gifted a ship to a partner, triggering a 10x reward. Obtained the Dream-class luxury cruise ship Starship, already stored in system space. Ron's consciousness sank into the system space, where he saw a giant, silver-white cruise ship quietly docked in the virtual port. The cruise ship's deck is equipped with state-of-the-art nautical equipment, and the cabins are extremely luxurious, complete with training rooms, a library of medical cabins, and even a temperature-controlled wine cellar. Ron smirked. That's great. Next time Luffy has to choose when he's starving, we can use this ship to make his choice. Soran leaned against the gunwale of the Mary, the sea breeze ruffling his short green hair. He gazed at the receding town of shells, his expression somewhat dazed. How ironic. He muttered to himself, just a few days ago I was a hunter chasing pirates, and now I'm a wanted criminal. Ron appeared beside him unnoticed, his navy blue cloak fluttering in the wind. Soran. His voice was calm yet firm. Status is never the standard by which a person is defined. Zoro turned his head and saw the captain's gaze as deep as the sea, navy or pirate. The important thing is to act in accordance with your conscience. Ron looked towards the distant horizon. A clear conscience is the key to success. These words struck Zoro like a bolt of lightning. His hand holding the knife trembled slightly. His promise to Kuina flashed through his mind, along with his unwavering resolve. After a long silence, he nodded solemnly. I've learned a lot, Captain. Dinner's ready, dinner's ready. Luffy's shout came from the kitchen, followed by a series of sounds of pots and pans being smashed on the floor. Ron and Zoro exchanged a glance, both giving each other a helpless smile. Zoro stretched his shoulders. I'll go keep an eye on things. Make sure the idiot captain doesn't tear the kitchen down. 3 days later from the lookout tower, Luffy suddenly shouted, island sighted ahead. Looks like there's something delicious. His rubber neck stretched to an exaggerated degree, and his nose twitched incessantly. I smell roasted meat. Ron took the binoculars Zorro handed him and a lush green island appeared in the lens. His pupils contracted slightly. It was clearly the island of Buggy's pirate crew from the original story. Let's go around that route and try to gather as many crew members as possible. The ship then chose to bypass the island ahead and sped towards the next island, with a piece of roasted meat bigger than his head dangling from his mouth. Luffy skipped over to Rune, who was looking at a sea chart, his cheek stuffed full of food, and mumbled, "Big brother Rune tilde." Ron didn't even look up. "If the meat falls onto the deck, you'll get 2 extra hours of training tonight." Luffy quickly stuffed the piece of grilled meat that was about to slip out of his mouth, swallowed it, and then grinned as he leaned closer. You see, Zorro is our crewmate now too." He rubbed his hands together, his eyes sparkling. "Could we give him a system too, like Ace and the others?" Zoroho was wiping the demon, looked up upon hearing this, his brows furrowing deeply. "System? What system?" Luffy immediately perked up, gesturing wildly as he explained, "It's Rune's ability. He ate the system fruit, which allows him to bind super powerful systems to others. He counted on his fingers. Sabo's is the pay-to-win system. Ace's is the daily login system. And mine is the choice system." Zorro looked at Ron with a blank expression. "Captain, what is this idiot talking about?" Seeing Zorro's shocked expression, Luffy became intrigued. He stuffed the rest of the grilled meat into his mouth and gestured excitedly. "Let me tell you, Zorotha's system is amazing." He excitedly patted the gunwale of the Mary. "Look at this ship. It's the system reward I got when I chose to beat up Monka." Zorro's tanky fell onto the deck with a clatter, and he mechanically turned to look at the 3-masted sailing ship. The Mary gleamed in the sunlight, its wood gleaming as if it had just appeared out of thin air, and the little lamb statue on its prow was so lifelike. Wait, Zorro's voice trembled slightly. He bent down to pick up the white moons, his fingers unconsciously tracing the mysterious cloud patterns on the blade. "Then this sword, of course." Luffy puffed out his chest proudly. "After I knocked that blonde B*****D away, I appeared in a flash." He exaggeratedly spread his arms wide, gesturing wildly. "I just wonder if Law's heavenly demon is." Zorro's expression became incredibly complex, first turning bright red, then gradually paling. He stared intently at the famous sword in his hand, then suddenly pinched his thigh hard. Hiss, the pain confirmed to him that he wasn't dreaming. This is illogical." Zorro's voice was dry, as if he hadn't drunk water for 3 days. "I've seen quite a few devil fruit abilities, but the ability to create objects out of thin air." His worldview was undergoing a violent earthquake. "This is completely beyond the scope of devil fruits, isn't it?" Ron leaned against the ship's railing, the sea breeze ruffling his robes. He observed Zorro's rare display of discomposure and slowly explained. "System fruits are indeed quite special. Strictly speaking, these rewards aren't created, but rather transferred from some dimensional space." "A dimensional space?" Zorro's jaw nearly dropped onto the deck. Luffy, completely oblivious to Zorro's shock, was still excitedly boasting. "The best part is that every choice I make gets me meat. Last time the system even rewarded me with a grill that can grill meat itself." He wiped his drool. "Brother Rune said there will be even more delicious rewards in the future." Zorro mechanically turned to look at Ron, his eyes filled with a mixture of awe and confusion. "Captain, what kind of devil fruit did you eat? This ability is too much of a cheat," Ron chuckled, tapping his fingers lightly on the ship's side. "That's why I'm so careful in choosing my bondage partners." His gaze suddenly deepened. After all, if such power falls into the hands of bad people. Zorro involuntarily shivered. He looked down at the tenki in his hand, then suddenly bowed, declaring, "I swear on the honor of a swordsman, I will never betray this power." Seeing Zorro's worldview crumble, Ron suddenly felt mischievous. He cleared his throat and said, feigning seriousness, "Zorro, As part of the welcome ceremony for a new member joining the crew, we have to bind you with a unique system. Zoro immediately straightened his back, his three swords trembling slightly at his waist. His eyes gleaming with anticipation. Captain, what kind of system is it? Ron's lips curled into a smile. The perfect system for you, the ultimate sleeping system. A sleep system. Zoro's expression froze instantly. That's right. Ron snapped his fingers, and a pale green light screen unfolded in front of Zoro. The ultimate sleeping system has been activated. Host Roranoa Zoro. System feature, sleeping equals getting stronger. Current sleep level, novice 0-100. Today's sleep task, take a 1-hour nap reward, basic swordsmanship experience plus 10%. Luffy laughed so hard he almost fell over, his rubber body bouncing back and forth on the deck. Ha ha ha. This is perfect for Zoro, all he does is sleep all day. Zoro's face turned pallid and flushed, and his hand gripping his sword trembled slightly. Captain. Oh, you're joking, right? Ron shook his head seriously. How could that be? This is a custom-designed system. He pointed to the instructions on the light screen. Look. It automatically trains swordsmanship while you sleep, simulates real combat in your dreams, and even accumulates experience points while you nap. He paused, then added, and he swiped his finger, and the screen switched to the advanced page. Special skill. Training in dreams. Duel with imaginary swordsmen in your dreams. What? Sleeping posture correction. Automatically adjusts to the optimal training posture. What? Snoring sword chi. You can cultivate invisible sword chi while snoring. Zoro's eyes gradually brightened, and he stroked his chin thoughtfully. Training in a dream. That's not bad, most importantly, Ron said with a mysterious smile. This system is perfectly compatible with your terrible sense of direction. Take a nap when you're lost and wake up stronger. Zoro's face immediately turned bright red. Who's directionally challenged? That was strategic reconnaissance. Luffy was laughing so hard he was rolling on the floor. Ha ha ha. Zoro can change his name to Sleepy Zoro from now on. Just then a system notification sounded. Ding. Host's drowsiness level has reached the target. We recommend starting your afternoon nap mode immediately. Zoro's eyelids suddenly grew heavy, and he let out a big yawn. Strange. Why am I suddenly so sleepy? This is the system reminding you it's time to train. Ron thoughtfully pointed to the hammock on his nail guard. Go on. The world's greatest swordsman starts with a good night's sleep. Zoro staggered toward the hammock, muttering, I'm not going to sleep, I'm training. Before he could finish speaking, he was already lying on the hammock, instantly bursting into thunderous snoring. Luffy crept closer and suddenly yelled, Wow! Zoro, who was fast asleep, instinctively swung his sword, the sharp blade cleanly severing the ropes on the mainmast. Wow! Luffy's eyes widened. You really can get stronger while you sleep. Ron nodded in satisfaction, gazing at the now clearly visible Sirob village in the distance. He thought to himself, Usopp, I've already thought of your system. Meanwhile, Zoro, lying in his hammock, was currently engaged in a fierce battle with the world's greatest swordsman. Hawkeye Mythikin, his dream. Every move he made was genuinely improving his swordsmanship. However, his improvement was limited. He could only imagine the people he had seen and their techniques, not create them out of thin air. Such combat experience is already invaluable, perhaps. Becoming the world's greatest swordsman really can begin with sleeping. On the Azure Sea, the Going Merry slowly entered the small harbor of Syrup Village. On the deck, Luffy, rubbing his rumbling stomach, complained with a gloomy face, all the meat is gone. He slumped on the deck like a salted fish. Brother Ron, when are we going to find some new meat? Ron stood at the bow of the ship, the sea breeze ruffling his robes. He gazed at the tranquil village before him, a slight smile playing on his lips. Don't worry. New companions will soon join you's end. He paused meaningfully. This village has plenty of delicious food hidden within. Just then, a burst of exaggerated laughter came from the hillside on the shore. Ha ha ha, Lord Usopp. I'm a great pirate with 8,000 men under my command. A long-nosed boy stood on a rock, gesticulating wildly as he boasted to 3 children. Last week I defeated a sea king. Its teeth were thicker than this tree, wow. Captain Usopp is amazing. The 3 children's eyes sparkled, their faces full of admiration. Zoro had barely stepped ashore when he heard these remarks and couldn't help but scoff. Huh. 8,000 subordinates. He glanced sideways at the boastful, long-nosed boy. Are these the kind of liars who spout nonsense we're meant to be our future comrades? Luffy's eyes lit up, and he clapped his hands excitedly, ha ha ha. This is so interesting. I'm definitely taking this long nose. Usopp then noticed the strangers on the shore, and his expression instantly changed when he saw the 3 swords at Zoro's waist and Ron's composed aura. He forced a smile and straightened his back. Who are you people? I am the great Captain Usopp. If you know what's good for you, let's go. Ron interrupted his performance smiling as he said, We'll go find Miss Kaya after we deal with the Black Cat Crow. You'll be coming out to sea with us. Usopp froze on the spot, his jaw nearly dropping to the ground. What? How do you know Miss Kaya and Captain Kuro? His pupils contracted sharply, his voice trembling. Wait. Setting sail, the 3 children looked at each other, and one of them asked in a low voice, Captain Usopp, are they just a few of your 8,000 men? Cold sweat beaded on Usopp's forehead, his long nose twitching nervously. Of course not. These are. Luffy suddenly stretched out his arm and put his arm around Usopp's shoulder, grinning as he said, we're your new crew. We heard you're really powerful. With 8,000 subordinates. Zoro rolled his eyes. Idiot, that's obviously bragging. Ron calmly straightened his sleeves. Crew's plan will be implemented tonight. Miss Kaya is in danger. He looked Usopp directly into his eyes. You come to this villa every day to let us know you're safe. Isn't that to protect her? Usopp's face changed completely and he stammered, Who? Who are you people? How do you know all this? We're the ones who can help you protect this village. Ron patted Usopp on the shoulder. Come on, take us to see Miss Kaya. Your 8,000 men now need to show their true strength. Luffy jumped up and down excitedly. Awesome. A new adventure, new crewmates. Suddenly remembering something, turned to Ron and asked, Brother Ron, does this long-nosed guy have a system too? System? Usopp looked bewildered. Zoro scoffed, this guy's words are perfect for the bragging to get stronger system. Usopp looked at the 3 mysterious strangers, then glanced at Miss Kaya's villa on the hillside. His long nose twitched slightly. Finally, he took a deep breath. All right. But you have to tell me what's going on first. As the last rays of the setting sun bathed the Kaya family estate, Ron recounted Captain Crow's meticulously planned conspiracy. As he described how Kuro disguised himself as Crabbeetle's butler and secretly plotted to kill Kaya and seize the family fortune. Usopp's expression grew increasingly grim. That be *****D, how dare he lay a finger on Kaya? Usopp's fists clenched so tightly they cracked, his long nose trembling slightly with rage. He suddenly turned and charged towards the manor. I'm going to kill him right now. Ron winked at Luffy and Zoro, and the 3 of them followed closely behind. Passing through the meticulously trimmed bushes, they arrived at the main building of the manor. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, they could see Kaya sitting at the piano. Hall Crabbeetle, wearing round-framed glasses, stood respectfully to her side. And Kaya, watch out for that butler. Usopp flung open the door, his voice hoarse with anger. The 2 people in the room turned their heads simultaneously. Kaya's pale face lit up with surprise. Usopp, how come you? Crabbeetle pushed up his glasses, the lenses reflecting a cold light. Mr. Usopp, it's impolite of you to barge in like this. Stop pretending, Crow. Usopp strode forward, shielding Kaya behind him. Your scheme has been exposed. Kaya blinked, puzzled. Usopp, what are you talking about? Butler Crabbeetle heaves hands. Crabbeetle suddenly let out a low laugh. He slowly took off his glasses, and his entire demeanor instantly turned cold and dangerous. Didn't expect to be seen through by a bragging brat. His 10 fingers began to twist unnaturally, and his knuckles made a crackling sound. Kaya covered her mouth in horror. Butlers. Since we've been exposed. Crow's lips curled into a ferocious grin. Then I'll kill you all before he finished speaking. His figure suddenly blurred, and sharp cat claws shot out from his 10 fingers. Kaya stepped back. Usopp bravely stepped in front, pulling out his slingshot from his waist. Let me show you the might of Lord Usopp. Kuro's figure vanished instantly, reappearing in front of Usopp the next second, too slow. A cold voice rang in his ears before Usopp could react. A tearing pain shot through his chest. For 3 bloody gashes bloomed on Usopp's chest, instantly staining his plaid shirt red. Kuro contemptuously kicked him, and Usopp flew out like a rag doll, crashing heavily into the wall. Usopp. Kaya screamed and tried to rush over, but Kuro grabbed her by the neck and lifted her up. What a touching friendship. Chloe licked the blood from her claws. It's a pity you're all going to die, hey long-nosed one. Zoro suddenly spoke. His 3 swords already drawn. There's a limit to being a hero. Luffy adjusted his straw hat, his voice unusually serious. You dare hurt my crewmates. You're dead. Ron with his arms crossed watched the scene with great interest. A mere Chloe like him didn't warrant his intervention. Crow's pupils contracted sharply. He dropped Kaya and took a wary half-step back. Who are you peoples? Zoro's blade flashed coldly. The one who will send you to hell. The atmosphere at the scene became deathly silent for a moment. Luffy stood there shaking his head expectantly, but he didn't hear the familiar system notification sound. Ugh, tilde no meat reward today. He pouted, kicking the floor in disappointment. Then his gaze shifted to Zoro, who was staring intently at the hypnotist Django, who had suddenly appeared next to Kuro. Django, wearing his signature heart-shaped glasses, twirled a hypnotic ring in his hand. Hes. Let me show you the power of hypnosis. A fierce smile crept across Zoro's lips as he drew all 3 swords simultaneously. Perfect timing to test the results of my training in last night's dream. His eyes were sharp as knives, and a chilling aura of swords emanated from his body. 3-sword-style demon slash. Zoro's figure instantly transformed into a green lightning bolt. Before Django could even turn the hypnotic ring, he saw 3 cold lights attacking from different angles. He hastily raised the ring to block, but heard a crisp crack. The hypnotic ring, made of fine steel, was neatly cut into 4 pieces. What? Django's eyes widened, and the next second he felt a sharp pain in his chest. Zoro's blade struck him hard in the abdomen, and Django coughed up a mouthful of blood, flying out like a broken sack, smashing through the window and landing in the flower bed outside. Zoro sheathed his sword and stretched his shoulders with satisfaction, as expected. Sleeping really does make you stronger. He recalled the scene of fighting the legendary swordsman in his dream last night. Every move and every stance clearly imprinted in his mind. On the other side, Luffy finally couldn't hold back any longer. Zoro, you're all done now, it's my turn. He adjusted his straw hat, his rubber legs snapping shut. Gum a bazooka. Kuro hurriedly crossed his arms to block, but Luffy's punch was powerful and heavy, sending him flying out of the villa and crashing into several large trees in the yard. Kuro scrambled to his feet, half of his glasses shattered, his face covered in scrapes. You wretched brats. I'll tear you all to pieces, Spoon. Crow's figure suddenly became blurry, darting through the courtyard at incredible speed, his sharp claws gleaming coldly in the sunlight. Luffy stood still, staring intently at the opponent's attack. Just as Kuro attacked, he dodged to the side and simultaneously delivered a powerful elbow strike to Kuro's back. Kuro spat out a mouthful of blood, staggered, and turned to strike with his claw. Although Luffy managed to retreat in time, 3 bloody gashes were still slashed across his chest. Luffy, Usopp called out weakly, struggling to get up and help. It's all right, Luffy wiped the blood from his chest, a strange smile spreading across his face. This is more fun. He suddenly stretched out his arm and grabbed a tree trunk in the distance. Gum-gum pendulums. Luffy's body was flung towards Kuro like a cannonball, the two colliding violently and crashing through several walls in succession. When the dust settled, Luffy was seen sitting on the unconscious Kuro. Looking at him with disdain, I won. Zoro walked over and glanced at the wound on Luffy's chest. That was too reckless. Luffy grinned nonchalantly, it'll be fine soon anyway. He rubbed his rumbling stomach. I really want to eat meat right now. Ron then strolled over Lesser Religlanced at the battle and nodded with satisfaction, well done. He turned towards the villa now. It's time to go see our new partners. Kaya was helping Usopp out. Tears still clung to the girl's face, but her eyes had hardened. Usopp, though pale, proudly puffed out his chest. See, I told you I'm Captain Usopp with 8,000 men. What? The setting sun cast its golden rays across the manor's lawn. Kaya, her hands clasped to her chest. Tears still streaked her pale cheeks, but her eyes were filled with gratitude. She bowed deeply to Ron. Thank you so much. If you hadn't appeared in time, my family's fortune and mine would probably be gone. Ron gently helped her up. It's what we should do. He glanced at Usopp standing to the side, his chest bandaged. And the one truly protecting you is this brave sea warrior. Usopp's face flushed bright red instantly, and his long nose twitched nervously. He took a deep breath, suddenly straightened his back and walked up to Kaya. Kaya, I want to go to sea with them. His voice trembled slightly, but his eyes were unusually firm. I want to become a real man. No longer that bragging and boastful Usopp. Kaya paused for a moment, then smiled gently and took Usopp's hand. I'll wait for you to come back. Those simple 4 words instantly brought tears to Usopp's eyes. Oh, right. Kaya suddenly remembered something and turned to the butler, instructing, quickly prepare that ship, I want to give it to. What? Her words trailed off as she looked in the direction Ron indicated. The Going Merry moored in the harbor gleamed in the setting sun. The ram's head on its prow and its pristine white sails were exactly the same as the ship she intended to give away. This is truly amazing, Kaya exclaimed, covering her mouth in surprise. What I wanted to give you was this Going Merry. Luffy jumped up and down excitedly. Ha ha ha. What a coincidence, this is my favorite ship. Ron smiled slightly. It seems we're destined to be partners. He looked at Usopp. Ready, Mr. Sniper King. Usopp took one last look at the village where he had lived for 17 years, at his mother's grave on the hillside, and then gazed deeply at Kaya's face. He took a deep breath, turned and strode towards the Going Merry. Let's set sail. The great Captain Usopp is about to embark on a real adventure. Kaya stood on the shore, the sea breeze ruffling her skirt. She watched the Going Merry sail away, and Usopp waving frantically from the stern. She whispered, please come back safely, on the ship. Usopp wiped his reddened eyes and suddenly noticed Zoro looking at him with a half-smile. What? He asked somewhat guiltily. From now on, please be mindful of how you address me. Ron is the Grand Captain, Luffy is the captain. And I'm just a little captain, and what about me? Do whatever you want. Usopp, bewildered, lifted his goggles. The reflection of Syrup Village receding into the distance shone through the lenses. He clenched his fist and silently vowed in his heart, this time he would not weave lies to escape reality, but to protect those who mattered to him and become a true hero. The Going Merry sailed against the wind and waves, heading towards the distant horizon. The next day, the Merry sailed quietly on the azure sea, sunlight streaming onto the deck and reflecting shimmering waves. Ron stood by the ship's wheel gazing intently ahead, while Luffy and Zoro stood on either side of him, their expressions solemn, as if they were contemplating something important. Usopp had just climbed out of the cabin, still holding his beloved slingshot, the Galaxy Slingshot, and was preparing to practice shooting. However, when he saw the 3 men turn their heads in unison, staring at him with an almost judgmental gaze, his long nose twitched involuntarily, and his legs began to tremble slightly. Are you guys having a meeting? Usopp chuckled awkwardly. instinctively taking a step back, or should I go to the lookout tower first? Stop. Ron's voice was calm but left no room for argument. Usopp froze instantly. Cold sweat beading on his forehead. I haven't been eating meat lately. Luffy, unusually serious, didn't chuckle instead. He adjusted his straw hat and said solemnly, Usopp. As a newcomer your strength, he scratched his head. Then turned to Ron, brother Ron, what should we say next? Ron side-strode towards Usopp, his navy blue cloak fluttering gently in the breeze. Usopp. As the captain of this ship, it's my responsibility to ensure every crew member keeps up with us. His gaze was sharp as a knife. With your current strength, future battles will be dangerous. Usopp swallowed hard, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. So you're going to throw me overboard? His voice was trembling. Zoro crossed his arms and scoffed. Idiot, we are here to help you get stronger. Get stronger. Usopp's eyes lit up instantly, his previous fear vanishing in favor of excitement. Really, you have a way to get stronger quickly? Luffy grinned and patted Usopp on the shoulder. Of course. Brother Rune is a system person, a system user. Usopp looked bewildered. What's that? A new devil fruit user, Luffy explained excitedly. It's about being able to bind super powerful systems to other people. Sabo's is a pay-to-win system, Ace's is a daily login system. Mine is a choice system and Zoro's is a sleeping system. Usopp was dumbfounded. Sleep. You can get stronger while sleeping. Zoro proudly raised his chin. Last night I dreamt I slashed Mihawk. Usopp, Ron coughed lightly, interrupting their conversation. Usopp. Based on your characteristics, I've prepared a system specifically for you. He raised his hand, a faint glow emanating from his fingertips. Usopp rubbed his hands nervously and expectantly. What kind of system is it? Can it turn me into a sharpshooter? Ron's lips curled into a mysterious smile. No. It's the ultimate bragging system. Bite. A golden light flashed, and a semi-transparent screen of light appeared before Usopp's eyes. The ultimate bragging system is now bound to me. Host Usopp. System feature showing off equals getting stronger. Current bragging level Bronze 0-100. Today's mission successfully show off once reward. Accuracy shooting plus 10%. Usopp's eyes widened, his mouth agape enough to fit an orange. Pretending. Pretending can make you stronger. Ron calmly nodded. As long as you successfully show off in front of others, the system will reward you based on the effectiveness of your show-off. The more impressive your show-off, the richer the reward. Luffy leaned closer and asked curiously, Usopp, how are you going to show off? Usopp snapped out of his shock, his long nose twitching excitedly. Ha ha ha. This system is practically made for me. He leaped onto the ship's railing, spread his arms wide, and loudly proclaimed to the sea, Lord Usopp, I'm a sea warrior with 8,000 men. I've punched a sea king and kicked over the marine headquarters. In the future, I will become the pirate king's right-hand man. Holy crap, that's incredible. 8,000 subordinates. And they're the pirate king's right-hand men. Luffy clapped his hands repeatedly, his eyes sparkling. He truly believed it. Others. Zoro shrugged boredly. Captain, wouldn't you say he's exploiting a bug? Ron was also stunned. Strictly speaking, as long as the system didn't detect a bug, it should be considered a success, right? Really? Ding. Successfully showed off reward, precision shot plus 10%. Current bragging level Bronze 2100. Usopp felt a warm current flow through his body, and the slingshot in his hands seemed to have become lighter. He looked at his hands in surprise. I really have become stronger. Zoro rolled his eyes. This system is perfect for this conman. Luffy laughed heartily. Usopp, you can change your name to King of Show-Offs from now on. At the same time, Ron also received a tenfold return of the subsystem's rewards. 10 times 10% equals 100%. Ron's precision shot has now reached a 100% boost. Ron nodded in satisfaction. Remember, showing off is just a means, becoming stronger is the goal. He patted Usopp on the shoulder. In the future, If you can intimidate your enemies with your coolness in battle, the system will give you extra rewards. Usopp clenched his fist, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. Don't worry. I'll definitely become the coolest sniper king just then. Luffy on the lookout tower suddenly shouted. What's that up ahead? A moving island. And the bow of the ship is a fish head. If nothing unexpected happens, it should be the Barady. The Sea Restaurant. A glint of amusement flashed in Ron's eyes. Looks like Usopp's first real chance to show off has arrived. The Going Merry adjusted its course and headed towards the distant floating restaurant, while Usopp was already conceiving his grand plan to show off, his whole body trembling with excitement. As the floating restaurant gets closer on the deck, Luffy swung back and forth between the masts like an excited monkey, his rubber arms constantly stretching and contracting, his eyes under his straw hat gleaming with longing. Meat. This is a real restaurant. He shouted, drooling, his stomach rumbling loudly. Finally, I don't have to eat Zoro's charred meat and Usopp's weird stew anymore. Zoro, leaning against the ship's railing, scoffed. You should be grateful for any food at all. You idiot captains. Usopp, however, paid no attention to their conversation. He sat cross-legged in the middle of the deck. A homemade notebook spread out in front of him, densely filled with notes, advanced guide to the system of showing off. On how to show off elegantly and domineeringly. 108 ways to show off, and so on. According to the system instructions, he adjusted his non-existent glasses, his expression one of focused academic research. The criterion for successfully showing off is to instill in the target audience emotions such as awe, admiration, or fear. His long nose was slightly red with excitement. In other words, whether it's bluff exaggeration or genuine skill, as long as it makes others think, wow, that's amazing, it's a success. Thinking of this, Usopp couldn't help but stand up and strike an exaggerated pose facing the sea. Lord Usopp, I'm the man who once sank a Navy warship with a single slingshot stone. Wow, really, Usopp, you're amazing. Luffy's eyes gleamed with shock as he stared at Usopp. Ding successfully showed off. Reward: shooting accuracy plus 5%. Current bragging level bronze 25/100. Hahaha. It worked again, Usopp danced with excitement. This system is perfect for me. Luffy was immediately disappointed. TCH tilde, it's another lie. It never fails. Ron stood at the bow of the ship, the sea breeze ruffling his cloak. He glanced back at Usopp, who was lost in the thrill of showing off, and a slight smile played on his lips. This system is truly tailor-made for Usopp. It allows him to both indulge his boastful nature and genuinely improve his skills. Most importantly, as his bragging level increases, the system will unlock even more advanced sniping skills. Same. For every reward received by the host of these subsystems, he will receive a tenfold return. 500 meters ahead, the Barady floating restaurant. Luffy suddenly shouted from the lookout tower, his rubber neck stretched to an exaggerated degree, his nose twitching incessantly. I can smell the stew. And grilled fish steak seafood risotto. Zoro's stomach also growled. After eating the sea kings that Luffy had killed, and the burnt meat that Zoro had grilled himself every day, he was really craving proper food. Usopp quickly put away his notebook, adopting a shrewd and inscrutable expression. HMPH. A mere sea restaurant, I, Lord Usopp, have eaten the food prepared by 8,000 underlings. Wow, and Ding successfully showed off. Reward: shooting accuracy plus 2%. Current bragging level bronze 25/100. Ron shook his head helplessly. Usopp, showing off in front of your own people will reduce your rewards, and your showing off level will stay the same. Is that so? Usopp scratched his head, then his eyes lit up. That's perfect, we'll have new audience members soon. As the Merry slowly approached, the uniquely designed floating restaurant was fully revealed to everyone. The restaurant's flag fluttered on the ship-shaped building, and neatly dressed waiters could be vaguely seen moving back and forth. Luffy, already impatient, stretched out his arm and launched himself straight into the restaurant. Meat. Here I come, hey, wait for us. Yuzop hurriedly slung his slingshot bag over his shoulder. Turned to Ron and said, "Captain, watch me this time. I'm going to make a big one in the restaurant." Ron smiled and nodded, "Go ahead. But remember not to overdo it." Zoro sighed and jumped off the ship as well, hopefully. "We won't cause any more trouble." The Going Merry was quietly moored next to the restaurant, and no one noticed the glint of anticipation in Ron's eyes. He knew that a future chef partner was waiting for them in this restaurant. Soon as the Going Merry came to a stop, Luffy couldn't wait to stretch out his rubber arm and whoosh, launched himself directly into the restaurant. Zoro and Ron followed behind relatively calmly while Usopp, the absolute protagonist of the day, stood at the restaurant entrance and took a deep breath and straightened his plaid shirt and beloved sniper goggles. "It's time to show my true skills," he muttered to himself, his eyes gleaming with the confident light of a king of showing off. Bang, the restaurant door was flung open, and Usopp stood there with his hands on his hips, chin held high, looking down on everyone with an air of superiority. His sharp gaze swept over every table of guests in the restaurant, finally settling on the head chef behind the bar. Everyone, he suddenly clapped his hands, the crisp applause echoing throughout the restaurant. "Stop with your knives and forks and turn your gaze to me." The restaurant fell silent instantly, the diners, the busy waiters, and even the chefs in the kitchen stopped what they were doing and all turned to look at the long-nosed boy who had suddenly barged in. Usopp nodded in satisfaction, leaped onto an empty chair, and surveyed the room from his elevated position. "I'm in a good mood today." He waved his hand, "Everyone, Haratade's expenses are on me." "Young Master Usopp," whoosh. The restaurant erupted in chaos. Guests stared in disbelief, some even pinching their cheeks to make sure they weren't dreaming. The waiters' trays clattered to the floor, and the chefs poked their heads out of the kitchen. "Really? Really?" a well-dressed businessman asked, trembling. "Of course," Usopp scoffed. "Your food is nothing but a drop in the ocean for me." He spread his hands exaggeratedly. "I usually eat the super-duper salmon from the deepest part of the West Sea. The meat is absolutely delicious." Ding. Successfully pulled off a little show-off. Reward: precision shooting max. Current bragging level: bronze 45-100. Luffy's freshly stuffed piece of grilled meat fell plop onto the plate, his rubber chin almost touching the ground. Usopp. "So rich." Zoro's three swords clattered to the ground. He mechanically turned to Ron. "Captain, do we have any crew members this wealthy?" For the first time, Ron showed a shocked expression. He adjusted his non-existent glasses. This really exceeded my expectations." "He's such a good actor," Usopp, basking in the stunned gazes of the crowd, gracefully jumped off his chair and leisurely straightened his collar. "I heard your food is quite good." He gave a forced sigh, "Then please have a taste." He strode over to the center table with an air of authority, casually tossing a gold coin past a trembling waiter. 10 of the most expensive set meals. The rest are a tip." Ding successfully showed off. Reward: 10 million berries. Current bragging level: bronze 65/100. Holy crap. It's 10 million berries. Usopp was utterly shocked. He never imagined that he would receive 10 million berries just for casually boasting. "This gave me more confidence, and I became even more uninhibited in showing off. It's a real shame I didn't bring my 8,000 underlings." Usopp said, regretfully shaking his head as he sat down. "But it's all right with me here. They won't be able to let loose with that." He picked up his teacup, took an elegant sip, and exuded an aura of "I am the boss." The entire restaurant fell silent. Everyone was stunned by the sudden appearance of this tycoon. In a corner, a blonde chef with curly eyebrows stared intently at Usopp, his cleaver slicing through the cutting board with a crack. "That long-nosed guy," Sanji said in a low voice, a cigarette dangling from his lips. "Just who is he?" Just then the restaurant door was pushed open again, and a group of fierce-looking pirates barged in, the remnants of the infamous Krieg pirates from the East Blue. Just as the one-eyed pirate leader was about to make a threat, Usopp slammed his hand on the table and stood up. "Who goes there, you insignificant nobody? Daring to disturb my meal?" He coldly surveyed the intruders. You have 3 seconds to get out, ding. Congratulations, host. You've stunned everyone and pulled off an incredible show. Reward Sniper Talent Awakening Beginner. Current bragging level Bronze 7100. A glint of light flashed in Usopp's eyes. An even bigger stage for showing off was about to begin. Facing the remnants of the Krieg pirates, he maintained his arrogant demeanor, arms crossed, long nose held high, and disdainfully surveying the intruders, HMPH. You mere pirates from the East Blue dare to be so insolent before Lord Usopp. He deliberately dragged out his words. Back in the Grand Lines. Small fry like you weren't even worthy of carrying my shoes. However, Krieg merely sneered, his eyes, hardened by the brutal trials of the Grand Lines, filled with disdain. Kid, I came back alive from the Grand Line. Your pretentious tricks might fool some brat from the East Blue. Usopp's forehead immediately broke out in a cold sweat. His attempt to show off had failed. His long nose twitched unnaturally twice as he looked at Zoro for help. Zoro yawned and lazily stood up, perfect timing. I have some new insights to try out. After saying that, in front of everyone, he actually lay down on the ground and immediately started snoring loudly. Crick's one eye widened, veins bulging on his forehead. You green-haired baboon. How dare you look down on me like that? He laughed angrily. Then suddenly drew a small cannon from behind his back. Dia-bangs. The cannonball whistled towards the sleeping Zoro, and the diners in the restaurant screamed in terror as they scattered for cover. Just as the cannonball was about to hit, whoosh. A flash of cold light appeared. Zoro remained fast asleep. But somehow Wado Ikemanji had already been drawn, and the cannonball was neatly sliced in two, exploding in midair with a boom. The shockwave overturned the surrounding tables and chairs, but didn't even harm a single hair on Zoro's head. Even more astonishingly, Zoro's snoring remained steady, as if the slash he had just delivered was merely an instinctive reaction in his sleep. The entire restaurant fell into a deathly silence. Usopp's jaw nearly dropped to the floor. Sleeping. You can even show off while sleeping. He suddenly realized. So this is the ultimate way to show off. Krieg's expression was as if he had swallowed an entire sea king. And his men were trembling with fear. Boss. What kind of monster is this? In the corner, the blonde chef Sanji's cigarette fell to the ground. He stared intently at the sleeping Zoro, then at the adoring Usopp, and finally at Ron, who calmly sipped his tea. These guys. Sanji muttered to himself, just who are they? Sanji's gaze never left Ron in the corner. The man in the sea blue cloak sat there quietly the whole time, his long fingers tapping lightly on the table, a faint smile playing on his lips. Even during the shocking moment when Zoro severed the cannonball in his sleep, his expression remained completely unchanged. This man. Sanji took a deep drag of his cigarette. His eyes narrowing slightly. Is definitely not simple. His gaze then shifted to Luffy, who was wolfing down his food. The straw-hatted boy had been focused solely on eating since entering, completely disregarding the plight of his companions. At that moment, he was stuffing an entire roasted chicken into his mouth, not even spitting out the bones. Are they really in cahoots? Sanji muttered to himself. It feels like they were lured here by food. Just then, a commotion broke out at the restaurant entrance. Is there anything to eat? I'm starving, Jin. The demon man and a combatant in the Krieg pirates staggered in. His face was deathly pale, and his lips were cracked, clearly indicating that he hadn't eaten for days. In full view of everyone, this once fearsome demon man actually knelt down on the ground, breathing weakly. Upon seeing this, Krieg flew into a rage, akin. What are you doing? Get up. Ajin didn't even have the strength to speak. His eyes were already starting to glaze over. I'm starving. Sanji's eyes sharpened instantly. He stubbed out his cigarette and turned to walk towards the kitchen without hesitation. Hey, curly eyebrow. Patty yelled from behind, that's the enemy. Sanji didn't even turn his head to those who are hungry. There is no distinction between enemy and guest. A few minutes later, he came out carrying a steaming plate of fried rice with eggs. The golden rice grains were distinct. The eggs were fluffy and tender, and it was garnished with bright green scallions. The aroma instantly filled the entire restaurant. Eat up. Sanji placed the fried rice in front of Jin. It's on the house, Ajin raised his head trembling. Unable to believe his eyes, Luffy's nose twitched suddenly. And he turned his head sharply like a shark smelling blood. It smells so good. I want some too, before Sanji could even respond. Luffy's rubber arm had already stretched out, pulling Sanji directly to his table. Make me one too. No 10. Sanji was startled by this sudden action, but quickly regained his composure. He straightened his disheveled tie and sighed helplessly. Wait. Soon, plates of delicious-looking dishes were served on Luffy's table. Luffy devoured them, his eyes growing brighter and brighter. This is so delicious. This is the best fried rice I've ever eaten. He suddenly slammed his hand on the table and stood up. It's decided, you'll be our crew chef. Usopp protested from the side. Hey Luffy. What do you mean by that? Is my cooking really that bad? Luffy nodded seriously. It tastes awful. That stew almost poisoned Zoro last time. Zoro rolled over in his sleep and muttered. It tastes awful. Sanji was caught off guard by the sudden invitation. Both amused and exasperated. Hey, I didn't agree to. Before he could finish speaking, Creek shouted angrily. Enough, this farce needs to end. Ron finally stood up from his seat. His movements were slow, but they made the air in the entire restaurant freeze for a moment. Sanji keenly noticed that when the man stood up, Zoro's snoring paused subtly for a second, and Luffy also temporarily stopped chewing. A farce. Ron's voice was soft yet clearly heard by everyone. It's time to end this. He walked slowly toward Krieg, his navy blue cloak swaying gently behind him. Sanji's pupils contracted slightly with each step this man took. His aura grew stronger, as if a sleeping dragon was awakening. Crick's forehead was beaded with cold sweat, and his hand gripping the heavy machine gun trembled slightly. He forced a calm expression and roared, playing tricks. I'll riddle you with bullets. With that, he slammed the trigger. Da-da-da-da. A hail of bullets rained down, shattering the restaurant's wooden floor and sending splinters flying. Yet Ron's figure flickered like a ghost, each bullet grazing his clothes without hitting him. How is this possible? Creek's eyes widened, his facial muscles twitching unnaturally. He suddenly pulled a specially made bomb from behind his back. Try this. The bomb hurtled toward Ron with a piercing whistle. At this critical moment, Ron's right hand suddenly rose into a claw shape. His 5 fingers curled like a dragon's claw, and he firmly grasped the bomb that was about to explode in midair. The entire restaurant fell silent instantly, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone held their breaths, and even Luffy temporarily stopped chewing. Dragon claw technique, Ron muttered to himself, his fingertips exerting slight force, leaving 5 deep dents on the bomb's casing. He looked up at Krieg's terrified expression, a cold smile playing on his lips. Here you go, swoosh. The bomb flew back at an even faster speed than it had come. Boom! Amidst the deafening explosion, Krieg and his men were thrown about, their bodies scattered and their bodies thrown back. When the smoke cleared, Krieg's prized golden armor was covered in dust, and his men lay sprawled on the ground. Ron looked at his right hand with satisfaction, a faint trace of energy still lingering at his knuckles. That kid Sabo really has talent. The dragon claw technique he just learned already has this much power. He felt the power flowing within him. After the tenfold return, it directly allowed me to master the complete dragon claw martial arts. Zeph's cigarette fell to the ground for the 3rd time. He stared intently at Ron's hand. The 5 claw marks left on the steel reminded him of a legendary technique. This could be. Zoro had woken up sometime earlier. He was holding 3 swords. Lost in thought. Dragon claw technique. I can practice it in my dreams now. I wonder if I can incorporate it into my swordsmanship. Luffy finally swallowed the food in his mouth and shouted excitedly. While Brother Rune is amazing, teach me. Usopp hid under the table, only half his head showing. I think I'm better suited for ranged attacks. Little did he know he had already missed a chance to show off. Krieg struggled to his feet, his golden armor creaking under the strain. And fear finally showed in his eyes. Who are you? Just as Ron slowly approached Krieg, a crisp system notification suddenly sounded in his mind. Ding, subsystem notification. Sabo successfully spent 500 million berries to purchase basic armament haki. Tenfold return triggered. Host gains intermediate level armament haki. A warm current instantly surged through Ron's body. He could clearly feel a new power within him. Looking down at his right hand, he saw a layer of dark substance spreading from his fingertips like a living thing, quickly covering his entire palm and forearm. Just in time, Ron muttered to himself, clenching his fist, which was covered in armament haki, and feeling the powerful force contained within it. Krieg had retreated to the corner, staring in horror at the strange black substance on Ron's hand. This is, as a pirate who had once sailed the Grand Line. He knew all too well what this meant, armament haki. Krieg's voice trembled violently. A power only the monsters of the New World possess. Ron's lips curled into a slight smile. Not bad. He reached out and grabbed a piece of golden armor from Krieg's chest. Too late, Snapple. The sturdy golden armor was easily crushed like a pancake by the 5 fingers enhanced with armament haki. Krieg let out a scream that was not human, and cold sweat instantly soaked his back. No. Krieg shook his head frantically, his eyes filled with terror. I surrender, I give up. Ron ignored him and crushed piece by piece the golden armor that Krieg was so proud of. The sound of each metal fragment hitting the ground was like a death knell striking Krieg's heart. Snap, snap, the restaurant was deathly silent. Everyone held their breaths, watching this astonishing scene. Sanji's cigarette fell to the ground again. He stared intently at Ron's dark arm. What is that armament haki? Zoro's eyes burned with fighting spirit. One day, I too will master this power. Luffy excitedly danced around. Rune's hands turned black. Was he poisoned? How cool. When the last piece of breastplate was crushed, Krieg collapsed to the ground, his crotch visibly wet. This once invincible overlord of the East Sea now resembled a terrified mouse, cowering in a corner, trembling. Ron deactivated his armament haki and looked down at Krieg. Get lost. If I see you in the East Blue again. He didn't finish his sentence, but the threat in his words was unmistakable. Like a pardoned man, Krieg scrambled towards the door, not even bothering with his unconscious men. He tripped and fell as he stepped across the threshold, disappearing from sight in a disheveled state. The restaurant erupted in cheers as guests raised their glasses to toast Ron's amazing performance. As Usopp picked up the gold fragments, he looked at Ron with admiration. Captain, that move was so cool, can you teach me? Ron chuckled and shook his head. Teach you my foot. Showing off brings wealth and beauty. If you know how to show off, you might even possess Conqueror's Hakayane in a million. Let alone armament haki. Usopp was dumbfounded. Could he really be that strong showing off? That's right, we must try even harder to show off. Sanji took a deep breath and stepped forward. Hey you guys. His gaze swept back and forth between Ron, Luffy, and Zoro. Just who are you? Luffy grinned and put his arm around Sanji's shoulder. My name is Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm going to be the Pirate King. He leaned close to Sanji's ear and whispered mysteriously. And we have a super powerful system on our ship Tilda. Ron shook his head helplessly, but his gaze involuntarily drifted into the distance. He knew that as Sabo continued to spend money and become stronger, the power he gained through the tenfold return would also become increasingly powerful. As long as the subsystem host keeps completing tasks, he can receive 10 times the reward. Outside the buried floating restaurant, Krieg's piercing scream shattered the tranquility of the sea. Luffy and the others' expressions changed drastically, and they rushed out of the restaurant. Ron was the last to stroll out, his sea blue cloak fluttering in the salty sea breeze. as everyone's gaze turned to the sea. A breathtaking scene unfolded before their eyes. A tiny, dilapidated canoe was cutting through the waves, with a tall man in a black trench coat standing at its bow. He held a long jet black sword, and every stroke of his blade carried a suffocating sense of oppression. Most chillingly, he was using the legendary Black Sword Knight as a paddle. Hawkeye Mihawk and Krieg slumped onto the deck, fragments of his golden armor clattering as they fell. Why? Why did they chase me all the way from the Grand Line to the East Blue to kill me? Mihawk slowly raised his head high sharp, eagle-like golden eyes sweeping over Krieg's pirate ship, just passing by. His voice was low and cold, just cleaning up some unsightly trash. Zoro's breathing quickened instantly, and his three swords trembled nervously in their sheaths. His pupils contracted sharply as he stared intently at the man standing on the canoe, the world's greatest swordsman. The goal he had pursued his entire life was now standing less than 100 meters away on the sea. Finally, I've finally met you. Zoro's voice trembled with excitement, his right hand unconsciously gripping the hilt of his Wado Ikemanji. He could feel every cell in his body screaming with a thirst for battle. Ron keenly noticed Sauron's state and whispered, "According to your dream system, as long as you witness his swordsmanship firsthand, I can perfectly replicate it in my dreams." Zoro's eyes burned with fierce fighting spirit. This is the fastest way to become stronger. Mihawk seemed to sense something and suddenly turned to look at the shore. His gaze bypassed the panicked Krieg pirates and locked onto Zoro, who was standing at the restaurant entrance. An interesting look. Mihawk raised an eyebrow slightly. Are there swordsmen like this in the East Blue? Seeing this, Krieg screamed hysterically, "Fire! Full power, don't let him get close." Dozens of cannons roared at the same time, and shells rained down on the fragile canoe. The sea was deathly silent. The remnants of the Krieg pirates stared in horror at the man standing on the canoe. Mihawk slowly stood up, his black trench coat fluttering in the sea breeze. His hand rested on the hilt of the legendary black sword Yaru on his back. Enough with the noise, Mihawk's voice was as cold as ice. It's time to end this, Zheng. The moment the black blade was drawn, the world seemed to darken. Mihawk's movement was extremely simple, just a basic slashing motion. But with this seemingly casual swing, a green sword aura powerful enough to tear the heavens and earth suddenly burst forth. Boom, boom, boom wherever the sword energy passed. All of the Krieg pirates' ships were neatly cleaved in two as if made of paper. Huge waves surged into the sky, the severed hulls slowly sank, and countless wood chips and terrified pirates floated on the surface of the sea. The entire dock was completely silent. Luffy's straw hat was lifted by the gust of wind, but he forgot to grab it. Usopp's long nose twitched unnaturally. Sanji's cigarette fell to the ground. Even Ron's eyes flashed with admiration. This was the strength of the world's greatest swordsman. Zoro's pupils contracted sharply, and his muscles trembled with excitement. His brain, like the most precise instrument, imprinted every detail of that strike deep into his memory. Mihawk's stance, the angle of his grip, the way he exerted force, and even the rhythm of his breathing. Do you see that? Zoro murmured to himself, this is the path to becoming the strongest. He suddenly turned around and grabbed Usopp's long nose. Give me 10 minutes. Huh? Usopp looked completely bewildered. What? What are you going to do? You're not going to go to sleep now, are you? That's right. This is a rare opportunity. Let me sleep for 10 minutes. Zoro's eyes burned with fierce fighting spirit. I will recreate this strike in my dreams. 10 minutes from now, I will challenge him. Usopp instinctively wanted to refuse, but when he saw Mihawk's hawk-like gaze, a crazy idea suddenly flashed through his mind. Trying to show off in front of the world's greatest swordsman. If this succeeds, how generous will the system reward be? His gaze unconsciously drifted towards Ron, who was watching him with a half-smile. His eyes seeming to say, go, I'm here, okay, all right. Usopp swallowed hard, forcing himself to step forward. Hey, you with the hats. Mihawk's gaze shifted to the long-nosed boy, his brow furrowing slightly. Usopp forced his trembling legs to stop and straightened his back. I heard. You're a Shichibukai, the world's greatest swordsman. Hawkeye frowned, wondering what this seemingly foolish guy was up to. Ding. Extremely difficult situation for showing off detected. Rewards have been increased compared to the original bronze reward pool. Random selection successful. Success reward, observation Haki Awakening beginner level. This hint gave Usopp a much-needed boost. Impressive. That's incredibly domineering. He took a deep breath and began to boast incessantly, since you're the world's greatest swordsman. You must have heard of my title as the world's strongest sniper god. Right? Hawkeye still frowned, racking his brain to recall if he had ever heard of this name before. HMPH ignorant, Usopp scoffed coldly. This scene completely terrified everyone present. The man before them was one of the 7 warlords of the sea, and also the world's greatest swordsman. This guy actually insulted the other person to their face. Is he crazy? Everyone present was stunned by Usopp. Ron nodded with a smile, indicating that Usopp's act was becoming increasingly sophisticated. Meanwhile, a system notification sounded in Usopp's mind. Host detected putting on a show that shocked everyone. Reward, Sniper Talent Awakening Intermediate. Do you want to claim the rewards? Note, the system has detected an existing scenario. If you do not claim the rewards, it will accumulate and be distributed in the next reward, ultimately doubling the total reward. Upon seeing the system notification, Usopp gasped in surprise. The rewards could actually be stacked. Doesn't that mean if he keeps saving it up, he'll eventually be able to pull off a huge one? Do not extract. Usopp took a deep breath, his eyes suddenly becoming sharp as knives. His back straightened. His plaid shirt fluttered in the sea breeze, and even his signature long nose now looked incredibly imposing. An invisible aura rose from his body, and even the wooden planks beneath his feet creaked under the weight. He's putting on such a show, even he'd believe it. Mihawk's golden pupils contracted slightly, and his black sword knight gleamed coldly in the sunlight. For the first time, he truly examined the long-nosed boy. Oh. How about we make a bet? Usopp's voice was eerily calm, his fingers lightly tracing the slingshot at his waist. You let me fire a shot, I'll take a knife from you. Boom. These words exploded like a bomb on the dock. Luffy's rubber chin fell to his chest with a thud. Usopp, are you serious? Sanji was completely unaware that his cigarette had burned his fingers. That long-nosed guy. Is he crazy? Zeph's wooden prosthetic leg snapped against the deck with a loud crack. What a joke. That's the world's greatest swordsman. Even slumped among the rubble struggled to lift his head, his eyes filled with disbelief. That kid. Is he looking for deaths? The other pirates watching on the dock were in an uproar. Who does he think he is? That's an eagle's eye that can split ocean waves. This cut will leave not even ashes. A flicker of surprise crossed Ron's eyes, which quickly turned into an approving smile. He clearly saw that Usopp's left hand hidden behind his back was trembling violently, but the expression on his face remained as steady as a rock. Ding, epic level bragging opportunity detected. Current shock level 87%. Estimated reward, observation Haki Awakening intermediate beyond visual range. Mihawk slowly raised his black sword, the tip pointing directly at Usopp's forehead, an interesting suggestion. But his voice suddenly turned cold. Are you sure you can withstand one of my blows? Usopp's Adam's apple bobbed, cold sweat soaked his back. But now the reward had been raised to the level of observation Haki Awakening, and at least to the intermediate level. He had to give it his all as a man, carrying the hopes of Syrup Village and Kaya's expectations. Usopp had to pull it off, then with unwavering composure. He raised his slingshot. What? The world's greatest swordsman. Afraid of my sniper shot? This sentence completely ignited the atmosphere. The crowd gasped in surprise, and several cowardly pirates even knelt down. He's gone mad, utterly mad, he's provoking Hawkeye. Something big is about to happen in the East Daxia Sea. Could he really be the god of sniping? The air seemed to solidify, and everyone's gaze was focused on the man wearing a black top hat adorned with fur. Mihawk's golden pupils, like those of a hawk, narrowed slightly, and his sharp gaze seemed to pierce through Usopp. The sea breeze swept across his sharply defined cold face, the hem of his black trench coat fluttering in the wind, and his thumb unconsciously rubbed the hilt of his black sword, Knight, producing a faint metallic scraping sound. The world's strongest, the god of sniping. Mihawk's deep voice carried a hint of amusement. His gaze moved from Usopp's trembling fingertips to the seemingly ordinary slingshot, and finally settled on those eyes that were trying to appear calm. On the dock, a piece of wood fell from the broken mast. Making a crisp thud in the silence, Mihawk's mind raced. This long-nosed boy possessed no aura of strength whatsoever. But anyone who dares to face themselves and make such a bet is either crazy or truly capable. Could such a master truly be hidden in the weakest of seas? The East Daxia Sea, his gaze inadvertently swept over Ron, who was standing behind him. The man in the navy blue cloak stood with his arms crossed, a faint smile playing on his lips, an expression of absolute trust in his companion. Interesting. Mihawk suddenly spoke, his voice as cold as a drawn dagger. I accept your bet. This statement is like a boulder thrown into a calm lake, creating ripples in the water. Hawkeye actually agreed. Just who is that long-nosed guy? When did the East Daxia Sea produce such a person? Luffy jumped up excitedly. Wow, Usopp is amazing. Zoro frowned slightly in his sleep. As if he sensed something, Sanji lit another cigarette, watching Usopp's retreating figure with a complicated expression. Mihawk slowly raised his black blade, its tip gleaming coldly in the sunlight. Let me witness the power of the so-called world's strongest sniper. Usopp's Adam's apple bobbed. His back was completely soaked in cold sweat. But the notification sounds of the show-off system were ringing wildly in his mind. Ding, epic level showing off moment detected. Current shock level 95%. Estimated reward, observation Haki awakening advanced beyond visual range. Is it high class? He had long ago thoroughly studied the levels of the system rewards, which were divided into 3 levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. The advanced level was the highest level of observation Haki. If Usopp successfully shows off, he can obtain the highest level of observation Haki, which is unique to the entire pirate ship. Even Captain Ron probably doesn't possess this level of domineering presence. So I have to put on a show. He took a deep breath. The galaxy slingshot spinning gracefully in his hand, this strike will be quick. His voice suddenly became steady and powerful. Hopefully the world's greatest swordsman can keep up. Mihawk's pupils contracted sharply, and all his muscles tensed instantly. For so many years, no one had dared to speak to him in such a tone. The sea breeze suddenly turned fierce, and dark clouds had somehow obscured the sunlight. The entire dock was shrouded in a suffocating atmosphere of oppression. Everyone held their breaths, waiting for this seemingly unequal yet suspenseful duel. Time seemed to freeze at that moment. Usopp's slingshot made a soft snap, and an ordinary-looking bullet slowly flew towards Mihawk. Its trajectory was so gentle, and its speed so slow that even a seagull could easily avoid it. Whoosh! The bullet struck Mihawk's black trench coat softly, without even leaving a wrinkle, before falling limply onto the deck with a few crisp bounces. Tab, tab, tab. The sound was particularly jarring on the deathly silent dock. Mihawk's golden pupils widened slightly, and a rare look of surprise appeared on his usually indifferent face. He looked down at the bullet that had rolled to his feet, then looked up at Usopp's brows gradually furrowing. This kind of attack, can it even be called an attack? After a brief moment of stunned silence, the crowd on the dock erupted in deafening laughter. Ha ha ha, this is the world's strongest sniper. My 3-year-old nephew throws pebbles with more force than that. That's hilarious. Is this some kind of tickle for Hawkeye? Luffy's jaw dropped to the ground. Usopp, where's your special move? Sanji's lips twitched. Oh, this idiot. Creek struggled to his feet from the rubble, his eyes filled with disdain. I thought he was someone important. But he's just a clown. Mihawk's gaze gradually turned cold, and his black sword knight emitted a dangerous hum. He slowly raised his hand, the tip of the blade pointing directly at Usopp. You. Are you fooling me? An invisible killing intent surged forth like a tide, and Usopp's legs began to tremble uncontrollably. But at this critical moment, Usopp slowly took a step forward, his long nose casting a shadow in the sunlight that perfectly concealed the slightly upturned corners of his mouth. Despite the ridicule and skepticism of the crowd, his eyes gleamed with the light of a wise man. Gentlemen. His voice suddenly became ethereal and distant, as if it came from the far reaches of the sky. Have you ever heard of God's sniper? These words struck like a thunderbolt, cleaving through the cacophony of voices on the dock. Usopp's fingers gently traced the patterns on the galaxy slingshot, his movements as elegant as a true artist's. Every bullet I fire contains the essence of internal destruction. His gaze swept over everyone present. What appears to be an ordinary bullet has actually damaged the target's internal organs. On the dock, an old pirate suddenly clutched his chest and stumbled back 2 steps. Internal sabotage. Isn't that the legendary? Usopp nodded slightly, continuing in his dreamlike tone. What's even more fatal is that the onset time of this injury is absolutely unpredictable. He held up a finger and wagged it. It could be in the next second, or it could be 12 hours later. But absolutely, it won't take more than a day. In the deathly silence, Usopp's voice, like the whisper of death, broke the stillness. Imagine, when he's fighting a powerful enemy, his injuries suddenly flare up. Hiss. A collective gasp rippled through the dock. Several cowardly pirates' legs went weak, and they collapsed to their knees. Mihawk's golden pupils contracted sharply as a top expert. He knew better than anyone that in a life-or-death duel, even a momentary flaw could be fatal. His observation haki subconsciously swept over his entire body, only to be horrified to discover he was actually suspecting he might have suffered internal injuries. At the same time, Usopp heard the voice in his mind that his boasting was complete. Ding, legendary level of showing off achieved. Reward observation haki advanced beyond visual range has been issued. Current bragging level silver 0-100. Each successful show-off earns you plus 5 points. As your level increases, the corresponding reward level will also increase. Usopp's vision suddenly became incredibly clear. He could see the patterns on the wings of seagulls a kilometer away, sense the heartbeats of everyone present, and even through objects and countless obstacles, he could still hear their heartbeats. They can even see the other party's exact location. But outwardly, he maintained that inscrutable expression, of course. Believe it or not, he turned as if to leave anyway. We'll see in a day. Wait, Mihawk suddenly spoke up. I took a bullet from Yao, you still owe me a knife. Upon hearing this, Usopp was dumbfounded. He had been stabbed by Hawkeye. He would either die or be crippled. We must find a way to dodge this attack. The air was silent. Everyone looked at Usopp, anticipating this world-class battle. At this critical moment, a snoring sound broke the silence. That's right, Zoro was sitting cross-legged on the ground, with 3 swords laid across his knees, and he was already snoring. This scene left everyone dumbfounded. Hey, Zoro, you green-haired mosshead, you sleepy dragon. Usopp was getting impatient and wanted to wake Zoro up so he could come to the rescue. Luffy suddenly burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. Zoro's sleeping system is activated. A flicker of surprise crossed Mihawk's golden eyes, sleeping in front of the enemy. His voice held a hint of amusement. An interesting swordsman. Ron leaned against the dock railing, watching the scene with great interest. He knew that Zoro was frantically reenacting that slash in his dream, and Usopp's show-off performance had unexpectedly bought Zoro precious time. The sea breeze suddenly stopped, and even the waves seemed to freeze in midair, just as Mihawk was urging Usopp to take a blow. A steady snore suddenly stopped. Zoro's cross-legged posture shifted slightly, and his sharp blade-like eyes slowly opened. with a glint of sword light seemingly flowing in his pupils. I understand these 3 words are as light as a feather, yet as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Everyone on the dock was involuntarily drawn to it. Zoro slowly rose to his feet, his Wado Ikamanji sword gleaming coldly in the sunlight. His movements were slow yet carried a mysterious rhythm, as if every subtle movement subtly embodied the principles of swordsmanship. The blow Usopp owes you. Zoro tied his bandana around his forehead. Drawing all 3 swords simultaneously, I'll take it. Mihawk's golden pupils contracted slightly. The moment Zoro stood up, he sensed a dramatic change in the green-haired swordsman's aura. If before he was a drawn sword, now he was like a sheathed blade, its sharpness concealed yet all the more dangerous. Interesting. Mihawk's black dagger knight drew a graceful arc in the air. 10 minutes of sleep and you've been reborn. Zoro didn't answer but simply held his famous sword Tenki to his lips and gently exhaled. His breath condensed into frost on the blade. This was a breathing technique he had mastered after countless battles with Mihawk in his dreams. Luffy suddenly burst into laughter. Zoro, you're awake. Usopp seized the opportunity to scramble behind Ron. Be captain. Zoro will take over now. Sanji lit another cigarette, watching Zoro's retreating figure with a complex expression. That green-haired guy seems different. Mihawk slowly raised his black blade. Let me see what you've realized. Zoro's lips curled into a smug smile. Something strong enough to take this blow from you. Before he finished speaking, his figure suddenly split into 3, the very starting stance of the Demon Aura 3-sword style that he had simulated countless times in his dreams. Whoosh! Mihawk's black blade struck for the first time, and the 2 figures crossed paths on the sea in an instant. When everyone came to their senses, they saw a spurt of blood gushing from Zoro's shoulder, and the hem of Mihawk's cloak had been neatly sliced off. Whoosh! A deafening scream erupted from the dock. Mihawk glanced down at his tattered cloak, a fighting spirit igniting in his golden eyes for the first time. Not a bad dream. He had actually seen through Zoro's training method. But a dream is just a dream. This next strike, I'll be serious. Zoro wiped the blood from his mouth, brandishing his 3 swords in a new stance. Then let's make this dream a reality immediately. Mihawk's black sword knight was finally drawn, and that simple, unadorned vertical slash contained the ultimate realm of swordsmanship, returning to simplicity in Zoro's pupils. The trajectory of that slash was broken down into countless frames, which was exactly the scene he had simulated thousands of times in the dream system. 3-sword style demon slash. Zoro's 3 swords parried at perfect angles, the frequency of the blade vibrations exactly the same as in his dream. Muscle memory drove his body to make the most precise response. The arc of the Tenkai's angle of the Wado Ikamanji, and even the rhythm of his breathing were all perfected. However, the moment the black blade was truly about to strike, Zoro's blood suddenly froze. The blade carries not only overwhelming power, but also an indomitable will. The form simulated countless times in dreams has now been completed with the spirit, the momentum forged through countless life-and-death battles. Unique to the world's greatest swordsman, snap. The parrying stance of the 3 swords was forcefully cleaved open, and a spurt of blood gushed from Zoro's chest. But what was even more shocking than the physical shock was the impact on the soul. At that moment his heart was screaming for help, and every cell in his body was screaming in fear of death. I see. As Zoro was sent flying backward, he suddenly laughed. Blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were brighter than ever before. The wound on his chest burned with pain, yet his heart was filled with an unprecedented clarity. Mihawk sheathed his sword, a hint of approval flashing in his golden eyes. Did you see clearly? Zoro crashed heavily onto the deck, then struggled to his feet on one knee. Blood pooled on the planks, reflecting his Chinese letter, Zhangning ferocious, hideous, and satisfied smile. Ah. I saw it very clearly in his mind. The scenes he had rehearsed countless times in his dreams were being reassembled. Every block, every dodge, was now imbued with a completely new understanding. The momentum contained in Hawkeye's strike was deeply ingrained in his martial arts instincts. Like a brand, Luffy gripped his straw hat tightly. Zoro. Usopp's sniper scope reflected a horrifying bloodstain. Are you kidding me? Ron, however, smiled with satisfaction. He could clearly see that Zoro's sword aura was undergoing a qualitative transformation. Still a long way off. Zoro used Wado Ikemanji to support himself, swaying as he stood up, blood dripping from the tip of his sword, making a crisp sound on the deck. But this path, I've already seen it. Mihawk turned and walked towards his canoe, his black trench coat billowing in the setting sun. Nice kid. I'll be waiting for you at the summit, Roronoa, Zoro. The sea breeze carried the final conversation. Next time we meet, I'll bring a sword that can cut you. I'm looking forward to it. As the canoe disappeared below the horizon, Zoro finally collapsed from exhaustion and lost consciousness. Even in his unconscious state, continued to train, his bloodied fingers unconsciously tracing lines on the deck. It was a new starting stance that incorporated Hawkeye's momentum into the three-sword style. With each breath, the wound on his chest throbbed with pain. But this pain was the best signpost on the path to the peak. At the same time, Zoro's body was rapidly recovering in his sleep evening. The afterglow of the setting sun dyed the entire sea red, bringing this thrilling duel to a close. Hey, still alive. Sanji kicked open the restaurant door, holding a specially prepared nutritious meal. Don't die on the deck, it'll ruin the guest's appetite. Zoro gave a strained middle finger. Even if you die, I won't die, Sanji. Boss Zeph, leaning on his wooden prosthetic ledge, emerged, surveying the ravaged docks. Suddenly he burst into laughter. Interesting. A fine young man indeed. He turned and roared at the kitchen. You rascals. The feast is here. As if a switch had been flipped, the entire floating restaurant instantly came to life. The waiters quickly moved out long tables. The chefs carried whole roasted lambs onto the deck. And even the guests who had fainted from fright woke up, rubbing their eyes. Meats. Luffy's rubber arm instantly extended, snatching away 3 roast suckling pigs. Sanji. 10 more servings. No, 20 servings, Sanji. A cigarette dangling from his lips. Kicked away Luffy's sneaky hand. Wait. Make some special meals for the wounded first. He placed a bowl of specially prepared seafood porridge in front of Zoro, adding, it has rum in it, it won't kill you. Usopp slumped in his chair, his long nose still twitching. I actually survived Hawkeye's clutches. He suddenly jumped up. No. I stunned him with my god sniper shot. Everyone, tch ... Ron leaned against the railing, his navy blue cloak bathed in the sunset. He took the cocktail Sanji offered him and suddenly asked, want to come with us to the Grand Line? Sanji paused, ash falling in a flurry. Huh. Your dreams can come true, they're all blue. Your culinary skills. Ron swirled his glass, the ice clinking softly. They shouldn't be buried in the iced sea, Sanji. Suddenly Luffy's loud shout rang out from afar. Sanji, be my cook. His mouth was stuffed with food, and he mumbled indistinctly, Usopp's cooking is awful. Damn it, I'm still here. Usopp was so angry his long nose almost twisted. Zoro struggled to sit up, scooped a spoonful of seafood porridge into his mouth, and suddenly his eyes widened. This taste reminded him of the dojo in Shimitsuki Village, and the tea Kuina brewed. Boss Zeph was now standing on the second-floor terrace, the dim light flickering in the twilight. Kid, if you want to go out to sea, then get lost. His wooden prosthetic leg creaked as he turned. Don't die on the way. Sanji's cigarette suddenly went out. As the first star lit up, the lights of Baratie completely illuminated the night sky. The rich aroma of fine wine mingled with the smoky fragrance of roasted meat, and joyful songs rose and fell with the waves. Zoro's snoring sounded especially peaceful amidst the noise. He was dreaming that he had cut through that green sword aura. Usopp boasted to every listener about the legend of his god-level sniping. Luffy weaved between tables, his belly bulging like a balloon. Ron and Sanji stood at the bow of the ship, gazing at the dark sea in the distance. The outline of the Going Merry was faintly visible in the moonlight, as if waiting for new companions to board. All right, I'll go to sea with you. Sanji then went to join the others for a banquet, the important thing being to say goodbye to Zeph. As the clamor of the banquet gradually subsided, Ron stood alone on the stern deck, the sea breeze ruffling his navy blue cloak, the moonlight casting a long shadow on the shimmering sea. Suddenly his pupils contracted slightly. Ding. Subsystem feedback. Host Usopp completes the legendary shock mission. Tenfold return triggered reward, God's Eye View. Ability description. Can sense the heartbeat and precise location of all living beings within a 1,000-mile radius. A strange warmth spread from between his brows, and Ron's sensory world was instantly reconstructed. Countless subtle presences lit up in his consciousness like starlight. Inside the nearby restaurant, Zoro's steady, powerful heartbeat could be heard as he slept. The thump-thump sound of Luffy rolling around on the deck because he ate too much. Even on the distant sea, the accelerated heartbeats of several dolphins playing. Most remarkably, it could clearly sense Hawkeye Mihawk, who had already sailed dozens of nautical miles away, pulsating with a steady, bell-like rhythm at a unique frequency. It was as if he were standing high in the sky, looking down on everything within 1,000 miles. This is God's eye view, Ron murmured to himself, his fingertips unconsciously tapping the gunwale of the ship, each tap perfectly coinciding with the sound of his heartbeat. A meaningful smile played at the corners of his lips. Through this ability saw much more. It's only just begun, Ron gazed at the starry sky, his ambition deeper than the night. He seemed to already see the heights he would reach when the rewards returned tenfold. Suddenly, Luffy's sleep-talking echoed from the cabin, meat. A super big piece of meat. Then came Usopp's startled scream, who? Who's touching my long nose? Ron chuckled. His ability to sense things from afar allowed him to see his companion's comical expressions even without turning around. This feeling of being in control reminded him of the exhilarating experience of having a full map cheat in a game in his previous life. However, his gaze shifted towards the Grand Line. The real challenge lies ahead. East Daxia Sea at dawn. As dawn broke, the Going Merry quietly departed from its floating restaurant. In the morning mist, the sails billowed silently in the sea breeze, and the silhouette of the Baradier was reflected in the pupils of the ram's head figurehead. On the deck, Sanji, with the first cigarette of the morning dangling from his lips, his blonde hair curling slightly in the damp sea breeze, frowned as he looked around at the group of people sitting around him. Luffy sat cross-legged on the wooden barrel, his straw hat pulled low. Zoro held his 3 swords across his knees, his eyes still sleepy, but he forced himself not to yawn. Usopp swayed from side to side as the ship rocked. Ron leaned against the helms, his sea blue cloak glistening with morning dew. I said. Sanji exhaled a perfect smoke ring, hugging his arms warily. I know I'm handsome, but I don't like men. You don't need to act like this, PFFT hahaha. Luffy suddenly burst into laughter, bending over backwards. His rubber arm accidentally knocked over a bucket of water. Sanji, you're hilarious. Ron was amused by the unexpected reaction, his low laughter startling several seagulls that had landed on the sail ropes. Zoro rubbed his temples in exasperation, idiot curly eyebrow. Don't flatter yourself. The morning light pierced through the thin mist, casting dappled shadows on the deck. Zoro tapped the deck with his scabbard and said seriously, Listen, in this ship, he pointed to Ron. This is the captain. Ron nodded slightly, his cloak shimmering in the morning light. That meat-loving captain is an idiot. Zoro pointed his scabbard at Luffy, who was secretly eating breakfast meat. Hey. I'm not an idiot, Luffy protested, spraying bits of meat from his mouth all over Usopp's face. I am the little captain, Zoro puffed out his chest proudly. And the 3 swords clashed crisply. Usopp jumped up, wiping the bits of flesh from his face. I'm the Grand Steward, in charge of all the logistics on this ship. He proudly raised his chin, including making sure that certain seaweed head doesn't get lost at sea. Sanji's cigarette hovered in midair. Wait. What about me? The deck fell silent. Zoro picked at his ear and said nonchalantly, you. Whatever Tahathas. Usopp slapped his thigh and laughed wildly. That's how it is for newbies. I started out as anything too. He mimicked Zoro's tone at the time, long nose. You'll be responsible for, just doing odd jobs. Luffy laughed so hard he rolled around on the deck, his straw hat rolling to one side. Ron bent down to pick up the straw hat, a gentle smile in his eyes. Don't worry, Mr. Cook. His voice suddenly turned meaningful on this ship. Sanji's lips twitched unnaturally, and he almost snapped the cigarette between his fingers. Just as he was about to say something, Ron suddenly raised his hand, his sea blue cloak swaying gently in the morning breeze. That was just a joke, Ron explained, as newcomers. There should be a formal welcoming ceremony. Usopp's long nose suddenly perked up excitedly, his eyes shining as if he'd discovered a treasure. Could it be that we're going to give the system to Sanji? He jumped up and down, waving his arms and legs. Great. That way we can get stronger together, system. Sanji's golden eyebrows furrowed, the cigarette trembling slightly between his lips. What slang are you talking about? Luffy had lost interest in repeating explanations and was concentrating on poking at a piece of roasted meat with his fork. Zoro sighed and rubbed his temples. What a nuisance. Simply put, everyone on the ship has a special ability system. He pointed to himself. I can get stronger by sleeping. Usopp immediately struck an exaggerated pose. My bragging system has been upgraded to silver level. I get rewards for successfully bragging. He then glanced smugly at Sanji and said disdainfully, this Lord Usopp is already a master of haki. Stop. Sanji abruptly raised his hand to interrupt. Ash falling in a flurry. Are you guys making up stories? What, getting stronger while sleeping? Leveling up by showing off? His gaze swept across everyone's faces, but he only saw serious expressions. Zoro impatiently drew his Wado Ikemanji. Watch closely. A pale green aura suddenly enveloped the blade. This is sword aura resonance from the sleep system. Usopp, not to be outdone, raised his slingshot, the projectile tracing a strange arc through the air. Behold my ultimate tracking star. A gift from the show-off system. Just need to attach a small one to AZ. Luffy finally looked up from the food, his rubber arm stretching out and circling the deck with a whoosh. My selection system is the best. Every time I choose correctly, I get meat. Sanji's cigarette fell onto his gleaming shoes. His gaze swept over every only settling on Ron. You. What exactly did you do to them? Ron smiled slightly, and a swirling stream of blue data suddenly appeared at his fingertips. System Devil Fruit User. Can grant others a special growth system. The data streams are composed of mini icons, a sleeping algae, a boastful long-nosed creature, a straw hat wolfing down food. Sanji staggered back 2 steps, his back slamming against the mast. Are you kidding me? This is absurd. His voice trembled slightly. How could a devil fruit possibly have something like this? Stop worrying about the scientific aspects. Usopp hooked his arm around Sanji's shoulder. The important thing is, he lowered his voice mysteriously. What kind of system do you want? A chef system? A kicking system? Or? Sanji's pupils dilated slightly, amidst everyone's expectant gazes. He suddenly turned and rushed towards the kitchen. I need a glass of rum to calm down. A burst of laughter erupted on the deck. Ron watched Sanji's hasty retreat, a playful glint in his eyes. He knew that the blonde chef would soon come to him asking for the system. After Alan, this vast ocean, no one can resist the temptation to become stronger. The waves gently lapped against the hull as the Going Merry sped towards its destination. Meanwhile, in the galley, Sanji stared at his trembling hands, and for the first time his self-perception began to waver. If what those lunatics say is true, can his dream come true? Sanji flung open the kitchen door, his leather shoes clicking rapidly on the deck. His golden bangs were ruffled by the sea breeze, and his eyes gleamed with a resolute light. Everyone turned their heads in unison, their faces still bearing mischievous smiles. I've made up my mind, Sanji stood ramrod straight, a wisp of smoke rising from his cigarette in the morning light. My dream is to obtain the power of the clear fruit. His voice suddenly became solemn, and he bowed to Ron with his right hand on his chest. If the captain can help me realize this wish, I will be eternally grateful. A hush fell over the deck. Even Zoro temporarily stopped sharpening his sword. Ron's lips twitched slightly. Well, he deliberately dragged out the words. The system's rewards are all sorts of things. Who can really say what's in them? Invisibility. Maybe it really is Tilda. Sanji's eyes instantly lit up like searchlights, and a cigarette fell from his gaping mouth. Are really? He lunged at Ron, slamming his hands on the ship's railing. Please, Captain, give me the system right now. Usopp muttered to himself. His ability to change his expression is even faster than my ability to show off. Luffy picked his nose, the clear fruit. What's that? Can you eat it? Zoro sneered. He probably wants to use it to spy on the women's bathhouse. Right. Are you looking to die, you green-haired moss head? Sanji's shoe dented Zoro's head. Then he immediately switched to a fawning expression towards Ron. Captain Tilda. Ron suppressed a laugh and snapped his fingers. As you wish. A pink data stream descended from the sky enveloping Sanji, and a semi-transparent light screen appeared before his eyes. The get stronger when you get hit system is now bound to me. Host Sanji. System feature taking hits equals getting stronger. Current damage resistance level newbie 0-100. Today's task get beaten up 3 times reward, kick power plus 15%. Sanji's expression froze. He mechanically turned to look at Ron. What? What kind of system is this? The get stronger by getting hit system. Ron explained seriously. You'll get stronger as long as you get hit. Different levels of hits yield different rewards, and the rewards vary depending on the severity. Are you kidding me? Sanji's roar startled a flock of seagulls into flight. I'm the chef, not a punching bag. Usopp was laughing so hard he rolled onto the deck. Ha ha ha. Perfect for you, you violent cook who's always fighting. Zoro unusually revealed a smug smile. Want me to help you complete today's mission right now? A special 3-sword style edition. Luffy suddenly stretched out his arm and hugged Sanji. Don't worry. I'll hit you very gently, gum. Stop it, all of you. Sanji unleashed a whirlwind kick, sending everyone sprawling on the deck. He pointed angrily at Ron. Can this system be returned? Ron leisurely adjusted his cloak. Once the system is bound, there are no refunds or exchanges. He suddenly revealed a mysterious smile. However, I heard that attacks from beautiful women count as special attacks. Sanji's anger vanished instantly, and hearts appeared in his eyes. Don't use this to test a chef's skills. What decent chef could withstand such a test? He had already seen the system's special notice. The reward for being beaten up by a beautiful woman is doubled. Perhaps this system isn't so bad after all. Haha, that's great. As Sanji spoke, something seemed to strike him, and blood suddenly gushed from his nose. But his expression gradually hardened. I understand. This is a test. Zoro rolled his eyes, hopeless. At this time, the sea breeze suddenly turned fierce. Zoro chuckled, and just as Sanji was engrossed in studying the system interface, the metallic scraping sound of the 3 swords being drawn simultaneously was perfectly masked by the waves. 3-sword style /. 3 afterimages streaked through the air. Zoro appeared behind Sanji like a ghost, his blade slamming heavily into Sanji's back with a dull thud that made your teeth ache. Bang! Sanji flew out like a cannonball, smashing through 3 water tanks before coming to a stop. Salty seawater and wood chips splashed all over him, instantly soaking his carefully groomed suit. Cough. You green-haired moss head, you're asking for it. The Sanji struggled to get up, his blonde hair sticking wetly to his forehead. But the next second, his angry curses stopped abruptly. The pain in the area struck by the back of the knife was subsiding at an astonishing speed, and the muscle fibers seemed to be injected with some kind of energy, reorganizing and becoming even stronger. Although I've recovered, it really hurts ding. The get beaten up mission is 1-3 complete. Gain kick power plus 5%. Current damage resistance level, newbie 10-100. Sanji's pupils contracted sharply. He could clearly feel that the explosive power of his right leg had indeed increased. This wasn't an illusion, the system really was. How about that? Zoro, sword in hand, sported a smug look on his face. Want a couple more hits to round it out. Anger and surprise mingled in Sanji's eyes, suddenly. A dangerous smile curled at the corner of his lips. Perfect. I'll use you to test my new power. Sanji's leather shoes traced a semicircle on the slippery deck. And he vanished in an instant. Zoro had just received a warning when a spinning kick carrying a strong wind was already upon him. First Meat System Special Edition, boom. Zoro hastily raised his twin swords to parry, but was still kicked several meters away by the sudden force, leaving 2 deep gashes on the deck. Hey. Zoro shook his numb arm, this strength. Steam rose from the tips of Sanji's leather shoes as he stared incredulously at his right leg. I've really gotten stronger. Ding, host detected actively taking damage. Bonus kick speed plus 3%. The system notification sound made Sanji's expression gradually contort. He loosened his soaked tie and assumed a fighting stance, moss head. Come on, Zoro's fighting spirit was ignited. And he held the Wado Ikemanji to his lips, just what I wanted. The deck was instantly filled with flashing blades and clashing legs. Sanji's leather shoes colliding repeatedly with the back of Zoro's sword. Sparks flying everywhere every time Sanji was hit. His system notification would cheerfully ring out. Meanwhile, Zoro's sleep system was silently recording the data of this duel. Bang kicking accuracy plus 2% clang. Leg impact resistance plus 4% user fighting behind the mast. Broadcasted live through his binoculars, Sanji has now been hit by a slash for the 7th time. Oh my god, the 13th time he's been kicked in the face. Luffy sat atop the ram's head statue, eating meat and cheering, well done, hit harder. Ron leaned against the ship's wheel, his clairvoyance allowing him to clearly monitor the flow of energy within the 2 men. Sanji's kicking skills were evolving at a visible pace, while Zoro's swordsmanship was becoming increasingly refined, exactly the effect he desired. When the outline of the island ahead appeared on the horizon, the battle on the deck finally came to an end. Sanji slumped on a pile of broken planks, his suit now a tattered mess. But the excitement in his eyes was undeniable. His kicking power had increased by 23%. Zoro wasn't in much better shape, with a large bump on his forehead. But he contentedly wiped his beloved sword. Not bad. My curled eyebrows, at least you've improved a bit. Don't get too cocky. Sanji panted as he lit a new cigarette. We'll continue tomorrow in the morning mist. The Going Merry slowly approached the dock in Logtown. Sanji leaned against the ship's railing, a cigarette dangling from his lips, checking the system interface. Suddenly his pupils contracted sharply. Ding. Hidden terms unlocked. Earn a transparent experience card 1 hour by accumulating 100 hits. The cigarette fell onto the deck with a thud, and Sanji's hands began to tremble uncontrollably. Wow. Well, that's great. He suddenly threw his head back and laughed wildly, startling several seagulls into flight. Sure enough, getting beaten up makes you stronger. Getting beaten up is the most wonderful thing in the world. Zoroho was wiping his sword. Nearly cut himself as his hand trembled. Has curly eyebrow gone mad? Sanji suddenly slid to his knees and rushed in front of Zoro, his hands clasped together, a strange light flashing in his eyes. Please hit me. Hit me now. Zoro was dumbfounded. The 3 swords clattered to the ground. He reached out and touched Sanji's forehead. No fever. I'm serious. Sanji grabbed Zoro's collar and shook him. Use your 3-sword style hit here. He turned around, stuck out his butt and patted it. Everyone on deck was stunned by the bizarre scene. Usopp's binoculars fell to the ground. Oh no. The cook's been messed up. Luffy tilted his head. Did Sanji get hit on the head by a sea king? Zoro took a deep breath and turned to Ron. Captain, Does this count as a work-related injury? Ron suppressed a laugh. It's the captain's duty to meet the crew's reasonable requests. Fine, Zorro reluctantly picked up his sword. Looks, you all heard that, he begged me to hit him. I've never seen a request like that in my entire life. The next moment, 3 swords were drawn simultaneously. Unleashing 3-sword style, 108 troublesome winds. Bang bangs bangs the rapids. Resounding blows echoed across the dock like firecrackers. Sanji was slashed and bounced back and forth on the deck. Yet he let out eerie cheers, ha-ha-has again harder. 10 minutes later, Sanji, bruised and battered, lay on the ground, trembling as he checked the system interface. How come it only counted once? The system displayed a message. Single attack determination criteria, there must be a clear start and end. Continuous attacks are considered one attack, WH. What? Sanji's scream startled the seagulls on the dock. So I just took over 100 hits for nothing. Usopp was laughing so hard he rolled into the sea while Luffy, clutching his stomach, rolled around on the deck. Ha-ha-ha. Sanji's like a bouncy ball, Zoro wiping his sweat said. My hands are sore from cutting so many times. And that's only once, Ron coughed lightly. His navy blue cloak fluttering slightly in the morning light. Looks like we're going to get beaten up again. Sanji slumped on the deck gazing at the azure sky, and suddenly realized a truth. The path to transparency was far more arduous than he had imagined. 3 days later, the Going Merry was slowly sailing on the sea. Sanji had completely figured out the workings of the Get Stronger by Getting Hit system. At this moment stood on the stern deck, his long legs gleaming metallically in the sunlight. With a fierce whip kick, the air exploded with a piercing bang boom. The test bucket was kicked in half, the cross-section as smooth as a mirror. Kicking power 100%, Sanji exhaled a smoke ring, his eyes gleaming with excitement. This feels amazing. However, when he turned to look at Zoro, who was dozing under the mast, the corner of his mouth twitched involuntarily. That guy with the green hair has been getting increasingly monstrous lately. Every time I wake up, my kicking skills are like child's play against him. The day before yesterday, I could barely manage a 50-50 chance. Yesterday, I only had a 30% chance of winning. And this morning, I was completely dominated. Damn the sleep system. Sanji gritted his teeth and stubbed out his cigarette. He clearly remembered what Zoro had said this morning while yawning. Curly eyebrow. I figured out the opening in your 37th spinning kick last night in my dream, and even came up with 87 ways to do it. That despicable B*******D. Does this mean he'll be beaten up forever? Usopp poked his head out of the machine room. Master Chef Tilda, how about trying my new invention? The automatic punch machine. Get lost. Sanji kicked away an empty can beside him. But then his eyes lit up. Wait, what did you just say? Get beaten up machines, never mind. I've used that thing before. The system flagged it as a failure. Usopp shook his head in disappointment. Never mind then. This is my great invention, Lord Usopp. Stop showing off to me, I've said that 13 times already. Sanji then looked at the system panel. Current progress of transparent trial card, 9100. This number made Sanji's heart race. Success was just around the corner. Even though it's just a 1-hour trial card. Once you've tried it, you'll want to try it again. Maybe next time you'll get a 1-day trial a year. Or even forever, 10 more tries. Sanji stroked his chin, calculating as his gaze swept over his companions on the deck. Luffy is playing rock, paper, scissors with the figurehead, which is completely unreliable. Usopp's inventions don't count, and he always likes to show off in front of him. Captain Ron's. Come on, those dragon claws that can crush steel are no joke. Hey you green-haired mosshead. Sanji suddenly shouted, wake up. The great swordsman is here. Zoro's eyes snapped open. His 3 swords already half drawn, the great swordsman. Where is the great swordsman? Beat me and I'll tell you. Sanji assumed a fighting stance, his leather shoes rubbing sparks off the deck. Zoro couldn't find a great swordsman, but someone wanted to get beaten up. So a cold smile crept onto his lips, trying to fill up your quota again. He slowly stood up. Perfect. The new technique I created in my dream last night needs to be tested in real combat. Enough talk. Sanji's right leg was glowing with an eerie red light, a system effect signifying his kicking technique had reached its peak. Lamb shoot, two figures clashed fiercely on the deck. Blades flashing and legs kicking. Usopp hiding in the lookout tower counted, 1-2. Oh my god, Sanji got slashed so badly, 9. When the 10th beating count was complete, Sanji was lying on the deck, his face bruised and swollen. But his eyes burned with a fanatical flame, and his trembling fingers tapped the system interface. Ding! Transparent trial card 1 hour successfully redeemed. Instructions for use, click the use button to activate. What? Sanji's trembling finger hovered over the use button on the system interface. The glow of the transparent trial card reflecting on his excited face. Finally, I can realize my dream. He swallowed hard, the hazy steam of the women's bathhouse already appearing in his mind. At this sacred moment, bang, suddenly a strained, webbed hand grabbed the ship's gunwale, leaving wet patches on the deck. Sanji dropped his cigarette and stared in disbelief as the hand swiftly withdrew back into the sea. What the hell? Before he could react, two webbed hands grabbed the edge of the boat at the same time. With a teeth-grinding scraping sound, a greenish-brown figure nimbly flipped onto the deck. Water droplets rolled down the other's scaly skin, which gleamed eerily in the sunlight. Heh. The merman grined, his large mouth filled with sharp teeth, his gills opening and closing with each breath. It's just a human's little wrecked ship. We're going to be rich again. Sanji's pupils contracted sharply. As a chef who had once worked at a sea restaurant, he could certainly recognize him, the iconic webbed feet, the gill slits on his neck, and the fishy smell. It was definitely a fishman, moreover. Judging from the serrated knife tucked into his waistband, he was up to no good. Enemy attack. Usopp's scream shattered the tranquility of the sea as he scrambled onto the deck. His observation haki had allowed him to sense the intruder beforehand. But the moment he saw the person's face, his expression turned a shocking green. This is so ugly. What? The fishman's smile froze on his face. He was Kruba, a member of the Arlong Pirates, who had roamed the East Blue for many years and had never been called ugly to his face before. You human who's asking for death. Kruby's webbed hand reached for the hilt of the sword. A series of unhurried footsteps approached, and Ron appeared at the cabin door in his sea blue cloak, followed by a sleepy-eyed Zoro and Luffy gnawing on meat. A fishman. Zoro's 3 swords were already half drawn. Looks pretty strong, maybe even more durable than Sanji. Luffy cheeks puffed out, asked indistinctly, can I eat it? Krubai was enraged by the group's reaction. You lowly creatures. Do you know whose territory this is? He drew his serrated blade sharply. If you want to pass through here, either pay a toll of 100. Zero Barriser. Bang. A sudden whip kick lashed out at his face, sending Kruby flying and crashing heavily into the mast. Sanji still in his kicking stance, smoke rising from the tips of his shoe sealed. Damn it. I almost pinned you down. Kruby scrambled to his feet, shaking his head, his fish eyes bloodshot. You dare hit me? I'm a member of the Arlong Pirates. Hey, Mosshead. Sanji suddenly turned to Zoro. Can I borrow a light? Zoro rolled his eyes but still tossed him a lighter. Sanji elegantly lit a new cigarette, took a deep drag and said, You have 3 seconds, jump into the sea yourself. He glanced at the system interface. Or I can help you. Kruby let out a piercing laugh. Damn it. How dare you ignore me, mere human? 3. Sanji's figure suddenly disappeared. 2. When it reappeared, it was already above Kruby's head. The burning leather shoe stomped down heavily. Fishman karate. Before Kruby could finish reciting his move, he was kicked into the sea, creating a huge splash. A few seconds of silence fell over the deck. Usopp pointed tremblingly at the sea. Did he just say he wanted to collect a toll? Luffy finally swallowed the meat in his mouth. So, there's a village ahead and meat to eat. Zoro sheathed his sword. Idiot, is that the point? Ron's clairvoyance had already detected the anomaly on the distant island, the presence of dozens of merfolk, and a familiar girl with short orange hair. A slight smile played on his lips, prepared to dock. It seems our navigator is in trouble. Sanji, however, was relieved to see the system interface. That guy had suddenly jumped out, startling him so much that he almost clicked to use the transparent trial card. That damn guy, he really deserves to die, etc. He seemed to hear something, Miss Navigator. Sanji's ears perked up instantly, oblivious to the cigarette falling onto his shoe. He dashed to Ron, his eyes widening into exaggerated heart shapes. Captain. Did you just say Miss Navigator? Ron's navy blue cloak swayed gently in the wind, a faint smile playing on his lips. That's right. Our future navigator, Miss Nami, eyes on the island ahead. Navigator Nami, Miss. Sanji swayed like a drunkard, two fountains of blood gushing from his nostrils. What a beautiful combination of words. Usopp's long nose twitched. Hey, are you sure you won't die from nosebleeds like this? That kind of thing doesn't matter anymore. Sanji suddenly straightened up, his right hand on his chest in a perfect chivalrous salute. On the high seas, beautiful ladies don't need any reason to board a ship. That's common sense. Usopp stared in shock at the amount of blood Sanji was bleeding, exclaiming, "The get stronger by getting hit system is amazing. It's like having an invincible cheat code." He's practically invincible. Luffy hung upside down from the mast, his rubber face close to Ron's. Brother Ron. A new crewmate, his eyes sparkled. Will they be able to cook delicious food like Sanji? Ron shook his head slightly, his gaze fixed on the faint outline of the islands in the distance. Navigators are the guides of the sea. Indispensable, but our navigator is in a bit of trouble. What? Sanji's blonde hair suddenly stood on end, and a visible rage ignited around him. How dare you put a beautiful lady in such a predicament? He kicked the ship's rudder full speed ahead. Saving the navigator is every knight's duty. Zoro's three swords clattered to the ground. That idiot. Acceleration device activated. Usopp frantically pulled down a control lever. An exaggerated spark suddenly shot out from the stern. This was his latest invention. The super thruster, which could propel the ship forward at top speed with just 2 cannonballs. The Going Merry shot towards Kakashi village like an arrow released from a bow, sending waves crashing up several meters high. Luffy, sitting excitedly on a ram's head statue, exclaimed, "Ha ha ha, this is so exciting." Ron's clairvoyance locked onto the figure with short orange hair on the island. He could see Nami being surrounded by a group of fishmen, and he could also hear her rapid heartbeat further away. The spire of Arlong Park gleamed coldly in the sunlight. Kakashi Village, Evil Dragon Park. The scorching sun beat down on the central plaza of Arlong Park, and Nami's short orange hair soaked with sweat clung to her pale cheeks. Her fists were clenched so tightly they turned white, her nails digging deep into her palms, yet she felt no pain. The empty box spread out in front of her rustled in the sea breeze. It was proof of her freedom, earned over 8 years with countless lies and bloodshed. Why? Nami's voice was hoarse beyond words. We had already saved up 100 million berries. She pointed sharply to the metal box in the corner of the plaza. The money was all here, why is it gone? The dragon sat on his tall throne, his jagged nose gleaming coldly in the sunlight. He slowly toyed with an orange badge, Nami's foster mother Bellamir's most treasured keepsake. Little thief Tilda, the dragon's voice was like a dull knife cutting flesh. You think you're the only one settling scores all these years? He suddenly crushed the badge. The annual protection fee from Kakashi Village has an interest rate of 20%. And with compound interest, the fishman accountant Hachi handed over the ledger at the opportune moment. You still owe me 380 million berries. You're talking nonsense. Nami trembled, her map needle slipping from her sleeve. We clearly agreed on 100 million berries, back then. Arlong suddenly swooped down, his shadow completely enveloping Nami. Back then. I even said that once you joined the Arlong pirates, you could never leave. His sharp fingernails lifted Nami's chin. Your village has survived this long entirely thanks to your hands that can draw sea charts. The surrounding fishmen burst into laughter. Kissing Fishman Chew deliberately imitated Nami's tone. I want to buy the village tilde. Octopus Hatchet clumsily imitated counting money, which drew even more ridicule. Nami's vision blurred. Every sleepless night of the past 8 years. Every scar left from stealing. Every fake smile she practiced in front of the mirror. All turned to ashes. What if I insist on leaving? Nami suddenly looked up, her tears dried by anger. The dragon's smile vanished. The air in the square froze instantly, and the fishmen's laughter abruptly ceased. Then I'll let you see for yourself. The dragon slowly rose, casting a shadow of death around him. How I nailed Najiko to the road sign in Kakasi village. His serrated blade pointed towards the orange grove. How can we make Bellamir's orange trees bear a harvest of villagers' heads? Nami's pupils shrank to pinpoints. She felt as if she were back on that rainy day. Bellamir's warm blood mingling with the rains, seeping into her trembling fingers. So, clever little thief Tilda, the dragon sat down again. Tossing her a new contract, continued drawing the sea chart. This time it's a lifetime contract. Nami mechanically bent down to pick up the pen. But the moment she touched it, she heard a deafening explosion coming from the direction of the port. And the iron fence of Arlong Park was kicked away. The steel gate flew into the square, it twisted and deformed, and crashed heavily into the center of the fountain, creating a huge splash in the dust. A tall figure walked slowly, the sound of leather shoes on the gravel clearly audible. Tab tab tab. Sanji's suit jacket fluttered slightly in the shockwave of the explosion, and the embers of his cigarette flickered in the shadows. Although his face was hidden in the darkness, the palpable killing intent emanating from him made even the fiercest fishmen involuntarily take a half-step back. Nami stared blankly at the strange man, the contract slipping from her hand and falling to the ground. She had never seen anyone dare to barge into Dragon Park alone like this. Nor had she ever seen anyone maintain such a terrifying sense of oppression in front of the dragon. The dragon's sawtooth nose twitched twice. Then it suddenly grinned. Interesting. Humans actually dare to, hey Sanji. A sudden shout interrupted the dragon's words. Usopp burst into the plaza panting, his backpack bobbing up and down with his run. Didn't we agree? Let me show off first before you get beaten up. He brandished his slingshot angrily. Procedure. Don't you understand the procedure? How many system rewards will I miss out on this? The scene was deathly silent. The fishmen looked at each other, completely unable to understand the nonsense that the long-nosed man was spouting. Sanji took a deep drag on his cigarette, a spark instantly burning half of it, seeing a beautiful lady being bullied. His leather shoes suddenly burst into an eerie red flame. I can't wait a second longer, Usopp sighed, rubbing his forehead. Oh no. My chance to show off is ruined again. Boom. Another loud crash, and Luffy smashed through the wall and flew in, only managing to avoid a faceplant thanks to his rubber arm tangling around the flagpole. Sanji. Wait for me. Then he looked up and saw Nami, his eyes lighting up immediately. You're the navigator brother Ron was talking about. Come be my partners. The dragon's forehead veins bulged. You bastards. How dare you ignore me? Please calm down, Mr. Dragon. A gentle, refined voice came from the main entrance. Ron, wearing a sea blue cloak, walked in calmly. With each step, his aura grew stronger. Zoro followed behind, carrying 3 swords, his eyes still sleepy but exuding a chilling, killing intent. Nami's pupils contracted sharply. Were these people insane? Didn't they know how terrifying the Arlong pirates were? Let's go through the formalities first. Ron smiled at Usopp. Manager Usopp, please begin your performance. Usopp immediately straightened his back, his long nose pointing high. Hey, you bunch of nobodies. Haven't you ever heard of the god of snipers, Lord Usopp? He pointed his slingshot at the dragon. If you know what's good for your release that lady right now. Otherwise, enough. The dragons. Too lazy to waste words with these worthless humans. slammed its fist on the throne armrest in a rage. Kill them. Have to. My attempt to show off failed. If I can't finish the process, I'm not going to continue. Let the fighting begins. Dozens of merman warriors charged at once. HMPH. I told you long ago these beasts don't understand human language. Trying to act tough with them is a waste of breath. Sanji moved first, his figure vanishing instantly and reappearing in front of Nami the next second. His leather shoes kicking a fishman dozens of meters away with a sonic boom. Don't be afraid, beautiful lady. Sanji turned and gave a perfect knightly salute. His voice completely different from before. May I ask your names? Nami stared blankly at the man who had been fierce and menacing one second, and charming and elegant the next. Completely unable to react. Sanji was about to say something more to Nami when several whooshing sounds came from behind him. His eyes sharpened, and he shoved Nami aside abruptly. Watch out, whoosh. Whoosh whoosh. 7 or 8 fishman warriors rushed in from different directions, the force of their webbed hands stinging their faces. Sanji's leather shoes sparked as they spun like a top on the stone pavement. Front meet, shoulder meet, back meets. Every kick landed precisely on the fishman's vital points. But the fishman only staggered a few steps before charging forward again. A spotted fishman, having taken a full-on spinning kick from Sanji, simply wiped his mouth and said, "Is this all human kicking skill is, Tusk?" Cold sweat beaded on Sanji's forehead. He could feel a throbbing pain in his leg bones. The fishman's naturally strong physique was indeed troublesome. Their thick, scaly skin was like natural armor, and a single punch from them had the power to shatter rocks. Ha, thin-armed, thin-legged human. Another octopus-like fishman seized the opportunity to entangle Sanji's left leg. Watch me crush your bones. Nami covered her mouth in terror. Watch out. At the critical moment, Sanji's right leg suddenly glowed with a strange red light, a system effect indicating his kicking technique had reached 100%. Devil's wind kick brazed octopus, boom. The entangled tentacles were instantly charred black by the high temperature, and the octopus fishman screamed as it broke free. Sanji took the opportunity to do a backflip to create some distance, but was immediately surrounded by the other fishmen. This is troublesome. He lit a new cigarette. Took a deep drag and said, "Looks like I'll have to use some real skills." On the other hand, Zoro's battle presents a completely different art style. The 3 famous swords gleamed coldly in the sunlight, each swing drawing blood. The Wado Ikamanji made a teeth-grinding scraping sound as it sliced through fish scales, while the Tenki greedily drank the blood. 3 sword-styled demons slash. 3 arcs of light flashed, and 3 mermen fell to the ground simultaneously. Their scales were as fragile as paper before the renowned sword. Too weak, Zoro flicked the blood off his sword. Glanced at Sanji, who was struggling again, said curly eyed, "Need some help." "Mind your own business, you green-haired moss." Sanji forced back the fishman who was sneaking up on him with a side kick. But because he was distracted, he was hit in the back by another person. He groaned and fell to one knee, while the system's voice sounded in his mind. Under the blazing sun, Luffy pulled his straw hat down, the shadow obscuring his eyes. The dragon's enormous body cast a terrifying shadow before him, its jagged nose gleaming coldly. Rubber. Luffy's arm was already stretched back, ready to launch an attack. Just then, a crisp system notification sounded in his mind. Ding, god-level choice triggered. Option 1, beat the dragon until he begs for mercy. Reward, a Sea King barbecue feast, 3 months. Option 2, break the dragon weapon. Reward, a pair of super alloy gauntlets. Option 3, smash the dragon's nose and teeth until it dies. Reward, armament Haki awakening beginners. Luffy's eyes instantly transformed into the shape of roasted meat. 3-month-old meat. As if he could already smell the aroma of roasted meat. "I'll choose Luffy," Ron's voice suddenly rang out. He stood not far away, his sea blue cloak fluttering gently in the wind. "Choose one that will boost your strength. I still have a whole ship full of special roasted meat that I haven't eaten." As the owner of the main system, He cannot directly interfere with the choices of the subsystem hosts, but he can still guide them indirectly. Luffy paused, tilted his head thought for a moment, then suddenly grinned, a whole ship full of meat. Brother Rune is always right, without hesitation. He clicked on the third option. Let's choose to blow this guy up. Enraged by this inexplicable conversation, the dragon roared, "You lowly creatures! How dare you ignore me?" His serrated blade slashed down with a piercing whistling sound. Rubber's rocket launchers. Luffy's arms suddenly stretched backward like a fully drawn bowstring, and then he shot out with astonishing speed. Arlong neither dodged nor evaded, but grinned and took the blow head-on with his chest. Bang! With a dull thud, the dragon merely took a half-step back. Is that all the strength you've got? A merman's skin is harder than steel. Luffy's straw hat was lifted by the gust of wind, revealing a serious look in his eyes. Then let's try this. His legs suddenly swelled up. Rubber tomahawk. A gigantic foot descended from the sky, and the dragon hastily raised its serrated blade to block it. The crisp sound of metal breaking echoed throughout the square. The fine steel weapon that had accompanied the dragon for many years was kicked in two. What? The dragon stared at the broken blade in its hand, its eyes flashing with astonishment for the first time. Luffy gave his opponent no chance to catch his breath, launching himself into the air the instant he landed. Gum machine gun. Countless punches rained down like a storm, tearing off the dragon's thick scales piece by piece. But the fishman's powerful physique allowed him to quickly regain his footing, and he countered with a powerful punch. Fishman karate thousand-wall straight punch. Boom! Luffy was sent flying by the punch, crashing through 3 walls before coming to a stop. Amidst the dust, he staggered to his feet, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Ouch, but a smirk appeared on his lips. That's more interesting. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the dragon charged forward, its broken weapon aimed straight for Luffy's heart. Die. At the critical moment, Luffy's body suddenly contorted like rubber, narrowly avoiding the fatal blow. His arm wrapped around Arlong's arm. Got you. Gum a windmill. Whoosh. The dragon's massive body was swung up, tracing several circles in the air before crashing heavily to the ground, shaking the entire square and causing spiderweb-like cracks to appear in the stone pavement. Cough! The dragon spat out a mouthful of blood, struggling to get up, but Luffy had already leaped high into the air. His knee aimed at his face. Gum stamp, snap. With a sickening cracking sound, the dragon's signature serrated nose twisted and deformed, and several sharp teeth splattered out mixed with blood. Final blow. Luffy stretched his fists to their limit behind his back, then unleashed them with a vengeance. Gum super pistol. The punch, accompanied by a sonic boom, slammed into the dragon's temple. The dragon's pupils dilated instantly, then dilated further. His massive body flew dozens of meters like rubble, smashing his shark-shaped throne, and finally lay motionless in the ruins. Dead silence. The entire plaza fell silent. The fishmen gaped, unable to believe that their invincible leader had been defeated. Nami held her breaths, fearing that this was all just a beautiful dream. Luffy, panting, stood up, picked up his straw hat and put it on. He turned to Ron, who was still standing there, and said, "Big brother, mission accomplished, well done." Ron then walked over to Nam, extended his hand and invited, "No, can you be our partner, Miss Nami?" These words were like a switch being flipped. First came sporadic sobs, then loud weeping. The nightmare of 8 years of imprisonment had finally ended at that moment. The other shaving learned of Nami's ordeal, quietly stayed by her side with smiles on their faces. Just then, an untimely shout interrupted the touching atmosphere. "Brother Runes!" Luffy suddenly shouted, "Where's the meat? Where's the ship full of meat you promised?" Zoro sighed and rubbed his forehead. "I just finished fighting and all I can think about is eating." Sanji had already eagerly moved closer to Nami. "Beautiful navigator. How would you like your steak cooked?" Usopp stood atop the dragon in a victory pose. "Look. This is what happens when you offend the commander of my 8,000 men." Nami looked at this strange group of people, and tears streamed down her face, but this time, they were tears of joy. Thank you, everyone. As the dragon crashed to the ground, a crisp system notification suddenly rang in Luffy's mind. Ding, mission complete. Reward, armament haki awakening beginners. Luffy blinked, then suddenly clutched his head. Wait, I suddenly have so many things in my head. He shook his head like he was shaking a piggy bank. It seems I know how to use that black thing. Amidst the puzzled gazes of the crowd, Luffy suddenly grinned, clenching his right fist. A shocking scene unfolded. His fist began to gleam with a metallic black sheen, the blackness spreading from his knuckles to his entire fist as if alive. Gleaming coldly in the sunlight, this is. Zoro's three swords clattered to the ground. As a swordsman who had witnessed Hawkeye's strength, he knew all too well what this meant. Sanji's cigarette fell out of his gaping mouth. Armament haki. Are you kidding me? Usopp immediately knelt on the ground. The haki that's a standard feature of the strong in the second half of the Grand Line. What? Our captain learned it before even entering the Grand Line. Nami didn't understand what was happening, but she could tell from the reactions of the others that this was unusual, that dark thing. Is it powerful? Ron smiled with satisfaction. This is one of the three types of haki. Armament haki, which can be used to increase attack power or enhance one's defense. Nami shook her head, clearly unaware. Luffy curiously examined his darkened fists, then suddenly slammed them together with a smack. Wow. My fists feel so much harder. He turned to Zoro. Mosshead, let me try throwing a punch. Get lost, Zoro quickly picked up his knife. Go find the cook to be my punching bag. Sanji immediately flew into a rage. Why me?